Thank you for everybody's patience. It sounds like closed session is winding down. We should be starting pretty soon. Thank you.
Matt and Christy, can you co-host me, please? Okay, good evening, everyone. We've been in closed session since 4:30, so that's 2.5 hours. And I want to welcome everybody to tonight's June 2nd Marina City Council meeting, the open session part of it with the public and the council present. We have all of our council members here and several of our department directors. I'll just say I apologize for our late start here. We did our best and we were late, and we'll try to move right into this so there's no further delay. And that is that our city attorney, please summarize for everyone our closed session items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the council met earlier this evening in a special meeting for closed session, and we did a short report out of that. The council then adjourned the special meeting and convened in regular meeting and returned to closed session to consider those items on the agenda for the regular meeting. The council did consider all the items on the agenda tonight for the regular meeting, which was 2 items of existing litigation and 2 items under potential exposure to litigation and an item on real property negotiations. There was information provided and direction given. There was no reportable action this evening taken during the closed session in the regular meeting. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Bob. And Councilmember Berkeley, would you mind leading us in a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance?
Pledge. I pledge of allegiance to the flag, and to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lisa. And let's go into special presentations to give a tearful goodbye to Sam Minorini in his retirement proclamation as starters.
We have a video for this one, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Brian. Brian is the director of our Public Works Department, supervisor of SAM. It might be volume off.
Tina, do you have your volume?
Yeah, I'm not sharing it. Matt's got it.
It's muted on the.
Not me. You need to turn the volume on. Look at the bottom of the screen. You see it's muted, and then put it full screen. There you go. And then
Can we have a full screen view, please?
Good evening,
Can we have
Mayor,
a full
members
screen
of
view,
council, and members of the public that are attending tonight. I'm Brian McMinn, the Public Works Director, and I'm going to talk to you about Sam Minorini, one of our maintenance workers here at the city of Marina, who is going to be retiring on June 12th. You know, most of you probably know Sam as the street sweeper, the guy who drives the street sweeper around the city and keeps our streets clean. So I'm going to read this proclamation recognizing Sam Minorini. Whereas Sam was hired by the City of Marina on October 23rd, 1989 as a maintenance worker in the Public Works Department. And whereas Sam was formerly employed as maintenance worker 2, Public Works Department in the City of Monterey for 9 years. And whereas through his work as a conscientious and dedicated employee, he has risen to the position of street operator and crew section leader. And whereas in good times and in difficult times, Sam has dealt with a diverse range of people in and out of City Hall and provided courteous and comprehensive help to city officials, members of the public, and fellow city staff, and has always been patient and understanding. And whereas his colleagues know him as a steady, dependable co-worker and friend who takes pride in his work and in this community, and who is always ready to lend moral support or a helping hand when needed. And whereas he will continue to be known as Sam the Man, Chicago Bears fan, throughout his retirement. Now, therefore, I, Bruce Delgado, not really, I'm just reading the proclamation, Bruce is mayor, and the entire city council want to express our sincere appreciation to Sam Minorini for his loyalty to the city of Marina over the past 31 years and wish him much happiness as he begins his new chapter in his life. Dated the second day of June 20.
Thank you to the city of Marina for this wonderful plaque. I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. That was a really good video. And Sam being...
Thanks to Police Chief Nieto for putting that together.
Thank you to Menini Productions and Tina Nieto. Sam being the jovial, can-do, always helpful, great attitude leader, is the crew leader of all of the Public Works crew last several months. You're going to be missed, Sam, as a person and as a worker and as a supervisor. Your light footprint wherever you go and lighting up other people's lives in a very positive way is going to be missed. So thank you, Sam, for all your work for our city and our community. And we do, as Brian said, wish you the best of times and all the life that you have ahead of you, which we hope is long and healthy. You've been a great member of the Marina family, Sam, for many years. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Terry Siegrist, our Department Director of Recreation and Cultural Services, to give us some recreation-related announcements.
Can you hear me, Bruce?
Thank you, Terry. Yes.
All right, so Matt's going to help us out with our recreation announcements. So here's the first one as we continue, obviously, doing our food distribution. The calendar is there. We have food distribution 7 days a week. That calendar is also on the website. It was the mailer that was sent to everybody to their 93933 address. And so staff is excited and continue to do great things with food distribution. And Bruce, we thank you again for your support today. We had a good time today. Also, the hotline phone number, if you need food support, 884-1247. Next flyer. Yeah, so it's time for promotions. And so let me just quickly give you the schedule. Crumpton's 5th grade promotion is tomorrow at 12. Vista's promotion for their 5th graders is tomorrow at 1. Los Arblos, the 8th grade promotion, is going to be Thursday at 1. And Olson's will be Friday at 10:30. All of those are drive-through promotions. And we wouldn't want to let those promotions go by without having a little party. So the Recreation Department, with its assistance from DJ July, are putting on a virtual dance for, first off, for the 8th graders. And the virtual promotion dance for the 8th graders will be Friday night at 8 o'clock. And the link is there. And we look forward to, it's a luau, so we look forward to celebrating the 8th grade promotion with that. Next flyer. And then we're going to kick off the 5th grade. Can't go without a little promotion party for the 5th grade. So their virtual promotion dance is going to be Friday at 7. And again, our DJ staff is going to make that happen, and that should be a good time. And the link to that dance is there. Next flyer. Right off the bat, we got to keep our kids active. So our virtual sports camps, 6 different disciplines, are available online. These are all virtual camps, and the information is provided in the flyer, and it's part of our virtual recreation center. And so we will continue through the summer to offer those 6 disciplines in our virtual sports camps. Next flyer. And then the Junior Giants, got to have Junior Giants over the summer. So we've got a free virtual season for the Junior Giants, and that season is laid out. They've done an excellent job of putting this together virtually with help from the players, and the staff at the San Francisco Giants, and we're so excited to be able to support that. And so those programs are listed, and then there'll be another one that comes out for the summer. So we're looking forward to that. Next flyer. Libraries at it. They're getting ready for summer as well. So they've got the free library summer reading program and the lunch at the library, which is a grab and go. And that information is there for you. That program will start June 10th and run through July 23rd on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And there'll be live virtual performances. It'll be an exciting summer. And we look forward to the Friends of the Library and our library folks helping us out with that. Next flyer. Obviously, it's a tough time, and we want to make sure that all of our youth are supported with mental health support. This is an excellent mental health program called Taking Time to Breathe. This program is being provided with one of our healthy organizations to support our teens as they go through this tough time. So we always want to make sure that not only are we recreating, but we're keeping our mental health in order.
Terry, I'm sorry to
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's some contact information on there. Would it be possible to make this a little bit bigger so that people could see the contact information? And maybe it could be read out loud? So
let me do that. So the link, you enter the code BREATHE, BREATHE 20. Those are all in caps. And then your access for free access is at mailc.mp/147189A 6025D / taking time to breathe for students. And it is available on our website, also on our virtual site. And again, as part of the rounded recreation program, we want to make sure that we take care of all of our recreational activities to include mental health. And this is an excellent program, and it's available through June 30th, 2020. Is that all of them, Matt? Yep. And then there are two things that we'll be adding this week. We're working with the Ventana Wilderness Society for our virtual day camp with Ventana, which will be starting next week on Monday. That flyer has been added to your virtual website. And we put together the half marathon for the summer, similar to our 5K till the end of May. So we'll have a half marathon virtual with medals at the end of completion. And we encourage you to check that out. So for everything, go to the city website, www.cityofmarina.org, and go to your virtual recreation center. Lots of activities, lots of things going on with our virtual recreation. And those are your recreation announcements for this evening. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor, and those listening. Take care.
Thank you very much, Terry. Okay, everybody. We're going to go to special announcements, and I wanted to ask Council if you would be all right if we limited public comment during this particular item to 2 minutes instead of our normal 4 minutes, because we do have so many people who I think want to speak primarily on an issue coming up. But this issue, this item, this time for public comment is to talk about meetings coming up, anything that's on your mind, such as the recent protests around the nation. But Council, do you think that we should cut in half to save time, or do you think we should leave it at 4 minutes?
I think we have a very busy agenda tonight, and I can imagine public comment, both in general public comment and public comment on the cannabis issue, to be quite long. And I think there's a desire for us to be able to address this tonight. So I would be in favor of cutting the comments to 2 minutes.
Other council members?
I'm good with that.
Frank wants to leave it at 4.
And I'd go in the middle with 3.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we reduce the 4-minute normal public comment on this item to 3 minutes.
A second.
Okay. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this motion to cut 1 minute off of your time only on this item to talk about things that are not on our agenda tonight? And
How long did he get to speak, Mr. Mayor?
They get 4 minutes. But with 77 people, hopefully we'll still save a little bit of time. All right, Karen.
Thank you to everyone here. Let's see.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you to everyone here for this chance to speak this evening. I'm speaking particularly to our local law enforcement members.
Hey, Karen, I'm sorry, Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is only if you want to speak to limiting the 4 minutes down to 3 minutes.
Sorry, nope, I'll wait.
Okay, put your hand up as soon as you're able. Mike Owen. Go ahead, Mike. You might be muted on your end.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mike, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, just a little observation. I know you try the very best to end your closed meeting not so late, but it does seem incongruous for you not to start the public meeting until it's 45 minutes later after the start date, and then ask the public to shorten their public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. That's a good point. And it hurts to hear it, but it's good to hear it. Okay, John Casa? You might be muted on your end, John.
Mute myself.
We hear you, John. Thanks for joining us.
In regards to shortening that time, I would just request if people want to take less time, but I doubt that I'll ever be talking to the council again. This is, for me, it's one shot, and to explain what I'd like to propose for the council would take every bit of that 4 minutes.
Thank you, John. We hear you. Okay, Elizabeth. You might be muted on your end, Elizabeth. Check your mute button, Elizabeth. There you go. Hello, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I don't have nothing to say, Bruce. 3 minutes or 4 minutes, it's okay with me.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. And maybe we'll hear from you later on other issues.
You might.
Okay. All right, not seeing any others. Let's come back to council. Could we have a roll call vote, please, Matthew?
Sure. Councilmember Berkeley?
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton?
Yes.
And Mayor Delgado?
Yes. And Frank, if I ignored you, I didn't mean to. You had your hand up.
No, I spoke on the matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad for that.
Put my hand down.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. So that motion passes. So we're going to shave 1 minute off of the 4 minutes, which is still equal to what all the other entities give. Some give 2 minutes. So we're trying not to be too stingy. Mike Owen, you had a very good point. Thank you for making it. Okay. So now we move to public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you have general announcements about what's on your mind or meetings coming up, announcements you want to make, now is the time. And Matt is going to, our assistant city manager is going to handle the clock. And we're going to start with Mike Owen. Welcome back, Mike. And you might be muted, Mike, on your computer.
Okay, are you good now?
Yes, welcome back.
Okay, thank you. At the last council meeting, I believe it was Grace Silva Santella that asked a question about childcare for people that are expecting to go back to work. And I appreciate Bruce our mayor, signing on to Jane Parker's Hot Topics yesterday afternoon, 5:30 to 6:30. That was a discussion with my good friend and neighbor, Francine Ron, executive director of First Five, which focuses on childcare. So just some of the points which I hope if people want to follow up, they could contact Bruce, who may have also information from that meeting. So first, it was mentioned that there were over half the kids in Monterey County are undergoing what they call toxic stress and facing adversity because of the pandemic effects. It was important for parents to take mommy time, not just for their kids, but special times to deal with their family. Excuse the incoherency. These are from my notes. There's paid family leave made available by Governor Newsom. Now, there is a Monterey County behavioral health science website or health website that has lots of contacts, underutilized, has counselors and workshops. If you just Google that, Monterey County behavioral health, they have therapists and workshops. Let's see, school MPUSD will be doing something over the summer to be announced. Terry mentioned the county libraries, food once a week. If you type in Bright Beginnings, that's for like from 1 to 5. That's a website, Bright Beginnings. They have a lot of information, emergency child care with Covina information. Actually, they have something called Covina Care. There's resource for parents, for essential workers for child care. There's child care providers now are able to form their own unions and apply for unemployment. Let's see. Terry mentioned, I'm not sure. There's summer camps by SPCA, also by YMCA. And the YMCA site says they won't turn anybody away. I mean, these are all, you have to pay for them, but they won't turn anybody away for financial reasons. So there are restrictions and more state guidelines coming out. And then just at the end, Jane Parker, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, this is on Hot Topics. Jane Parker, our county supervisor, has these topics every Monday from 5:30 to 6:30. And I just appreciate Wendy filling in for her, which is another reason I really want to vote for her. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. We'll go to Karen. Hello, Karen. Welcome back.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone here for this chance to speak this evening. I'm speaking particularly, hopefully in 2 minutes or 3, to our local law enforcement members. As a former Leo wife whose spouse worked in probably the most active jurisdiction in the state for demonstrations, protests, riots, and sit-ins, which did often lead to good changes, and also as a person whose professional career was regulated at the state and federal levels, and among whom there was a code of ethical behavior, I was often placed in a position by my superiors to choose to do what I knew was right over their preferences. It was worth the years of scorn from them to complete a career where I knew I had behaved conscientiously toward my patients and my rank and file coworkers. So this is my message. Ground yourselves in the knowledge of ethical and conscientious policing. Hold this deep in your hearts so that in the heat of difficult situations, making the right choice will be the easy choice. I say this knowing that our police force has done an admirable job and not from the knowledge of wrongdoing. I also say this to exhort each of us to do the right thing, whether or not anyone is looking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And now let's go to Dr. Karen.
Hello?
Hello, Karen. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. That is so wonderful to follow Karen, because I feel like that is what it's all about, to do what is right, and then for me to do what is right for my patients. So hi, hello Mayor, City Council members, and the staff of City of Marina. I'm glad for this opportunity to talk with you. I wish I was coming before you this evening to tell you about all the exciting things that are happening at the Marina Equestrian Center Park and with the Fort Ord Station Veterinary Hospital Museum. It is very exciting. There's a tremendous amount of interest, and really the community is hungry for it. However, I'm not before you to express that excitement and progress. Instead, I'm here to plead with the City Council to hold the Marina Equestrian Association accountable to the operating agreement that they have with the city. There are a list of violations that directly impact horse health and safety. These are hazards that not only can affect horses, but humans as well. This is not about fancy fixes and upscale things. This is just basic, common horse sense, horse health care and safety and management. My actions to bring these to light at the Marine Equestrian Center have resulted in direct retaliatory targeting of me personally and specifically, rather than addressing the hazards that I have been trying to remedy since I got there almost a year ago. I feel that Terry Siegrist and the staff of the Parks and Rec, I see the great things every time I see a city council meeting. I see the great things they're doing for the community and the kids of Marina. And I wonder why the bar is so low for the equestrian center. It could and should be so much more. So I'm before you this evening pleading with you to hold them accountable to their operating agreement with you and to be accountable to their obligations. Thank you, City Council, the Mayor, and the members to listening to me tonight, and hopefully we can move forward in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. Let's go to Darren Dillon and perhaps Nan Dillon.
Hi there, it's Nan Dillon. Hi, council members and Mayor Delgado. While I am okay with our police department, I just hope that in light of the recent protests, that our police department has been trained in conflict resolution and conflict de-escalation. I think that's very important. That's all I wanted to say to keep our protest, if we have any safe. Anything happening, to keep the protest safe. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nan, and hello to Darren. Okay, Debbie B.
I'm okay.
Yes, thanks for joining us.
Hello. All right. I'm want to ask you to please make sure for next year on Labor Day and on Veterans Day and all of those days that I have come to love seeing the flags in the city of Marina, to go ahead and do everything in your power now to make sure that there are people that have the flags and that are ready, and you have the volunteers assigned and everything is a go, so that we don't have to go ahead and repeat what I hope has not become a habit of not having the flags and feeling pride of the flags and living in the city of Marina on Memorial Day and Labor Day when they have been missed the past 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Good suggestion. Okay, John Casa.
Thank you. And can you see a picture of me at this point?
No, just your name.
Okay, great. My name is John Casa. I live at 3098 DeForest Road. That's the new Jensen Oaks And just for a second, I'd like to thank whoever was involved with this beautiful project. These are tremendous apartments, and so thanks for anyone that was involved in that. I'm calling today to ask that the City Council condemn the use of force against peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park yesterday. In my 70 years on this planet, I have never seen anything as outrageous as this. The Justice Department have said that Attorney General Barr ordered the clearing. Now, you can say, well, what does that have to do with our little town here? Well, we depend on tourism. All those motels on Reservation Road, the Comfort Inn, and so forth, they rely on international as well as local tourism. That local tourism saw, or let's say the Australian tourists that come here, they saw an Australian news people beaten up on the orders of Attorney General Barr. And this City Council can start the ball rolling on as far as it's completely, there's nothing disputed about it. There's no fact that anyone can come up and say, well, we should wait for further investigation, blah, blah, blah. The Justice Department has said that, yes, we ordered this so that the president could walk over and have a photo op in a church that he has nothing to do with. Please consider a resolution, and I could suggest a wording for it, but with attorneys like Frank O'Connell on the council, I'm sure you'd have no problem coming up with it tonight. Maybe you can waive second readings or whatever. Just a resolution saying that we condemn this action by the President of the United States in suppressing free speech. There was no evidence of any violence in the people at Lafayette Park. They simply wanted to clear a path for the president to walk over to that church. And this is the most outrageous attack on our First Amendment that I have seen in my lifetime. And I don't know what compares to it, maybe the 68 police riots in Chicago. But apart from that, we all have to speak up on it. And the City Council can certainly do that. There's nothing preventing it from it. And it's, it's directly related to our tax base in the sense that if there's less tourists here, then that affects the tax base. So that's not the best reason for it, but I'd ask you consider this resolution tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and especially for being right on target with your 3 minutes, even though we just recently cut it from 4. We really appreciate your accommodating that. Okay, Maika Saiga. Go ahead, Maika, and if we don't hear you, it might be because you're muted out here.
You were unmuted by the host. Hey, Bruce, this is John Gagan. I'm using her computer right now.
Hello, John. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Good. The traffic light in front of Denny's on Reservation Road in Cardozo usually works with the traffic sensors. Lately, the last couple of days, it has not been doing that, and we're getting big backups of traffic over there.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. You're talking to the Public Works Director, who's two spaces below your picture. And that's really good to have the eyes and ears out there anywhere in the city. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Brian McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Many of us in Marina are hurting tonight. Many Black people in Marina have been hurting for a long time. I've done a lot of listening the last several days, and one thing I've heard repeated a few times is that the sentiment that Marina is immune to racism. This isn't true. I wish it was true. I wish that if I said it often enough, it would be true. It is not. The current state of affairs is complex, and it deals with racism and fear of mistrust of police by people of color. This is nothing new. Warranted or not, a majority of people are in some way afraid of the police. A 2013 University of Illinois study in LA indicated a majority of foreign-born people, if a victim of a crime, would rather tell their church or community leaders than a law enforcement officer. Another study indicated 63% of Black Americans nationwide go to bed at night worried that police will use deadly force on them or a family member. As a white person, probably my only legitimate fear of police is that they might actually hold me accountable when I'm actually doing something wrong. What an incredible, unfair privilege to have. So over a year ago, I came before you and told you I was planting a seed. I spoke about the possibility of mechanisms that might help alleviate fear and build community trust among not only the community and police, but also amongst us individuals within the community. I spoke about exploring the possibilities of citizen-led police commissions as one possible way of building community trust. Oddly enough, one fellow citizen got up after me and spoke up against the idea. This person, a former elected official in Marina, was quoted in the July 26, 2018 edition of the Monterey County Weekly as describing President Obama as a Black bitch. I hope you, if you had any doubt that racism exists here in Marina, this helps you understand. Tonight, as I water that seed, I want to implore the council to consider this and other ideas that help forge strong relationships along race lines. Our second annual City of Marina multicultural event was supposed to be held this last weekend as a celebration of our diversity and inclusion, and we must double down and continue to invest in these types of community building events. It often takes bold action to achieve superior results. Please think often about how you can encourage our community to come together and think boldly, but most importantly, act decisively. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Brian. We'll go to Elizabeth. Welcome back, Elizabeth. You might be muted on your computer end. Okay, Elizabeth, we're going to go to Christina and then come back to you. Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes, thank you for joining us.
I assume?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for more than 20 years in Marina. Well, first of all, Mayor, City Council members, thank you. Thank you for giving us this space, this truly democratic space to voice our collective grief and figuring and wondering where we go from here. Our community must denounce violence on our brothers and sisters of color. As the 8th most diverse city in California, and I keep saying this, we can use our collective voices to affect change. I think first of all, I welcome and request further dialogue on this at a city level. Last evening, I was deeply moved by Chief Tina Nieto and Police Commander Eddie Anderson in your town hall meeting, share their deeply personal feelings of sheer disgust and sadness for the death of Mr. Floyd. Commander Anderson pledged it could never happen here in Marina. I want to believe him, but we cannot be safe in our bubble. We must continue to walk the bold path and call out racism, never accept it. I just want to say thank you for giving us the space. And if we can affect change together on a city level, the hardest thing to do is to face the enemy, which is racism. Today, I was lucky enough to be on a call with Clarence Jones, a speechwriter for Martin Luther King, who's credited in some part for writing the I Had a Dream speech. I was really set by his somber tone that this is bound to happen. Institutional changes need to happen. And I pledge that we must move together and face on those challenges. He also shared that it starts with us. And I've asked this question of another assembly member, Reginald Sawyer of the 59th District in Los Angeles, another African-American man I was on a call with recently. And he just reminded us that it starts at home. It starts with ourselves, it starts with our families, it starts with our communities. So I just want to say thank you for the space and thank you deeply to Chief Nieto for setting an exceptional example for her police department, our police department. So with that, I give up my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina, for those words. Okay, Elizabeth, I've done everything I can to unmute you, so you might be muted on your computer. Oh, there you go, Elizabeth. You came and left. Try again, Elizabeth, to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks. Welcome back.
Thanks. I said I was very disappointed today. I went to buy some gift cards for our students, the ones who won the essay contest, you know, and they get a monetary reward. And instead of giving them a check, I buy them gift cards. And Target was closed. And I was kind of upset about that. But I understand with all the things that's going on, it's terrible that people have to be so frustrated that they rob and loot, I mean, you know, and break into places. That is no way to protest. That doesn't do anything. It's not going to bring that person back. I'm sorry. I feel very sorry for the family and for the gentleman, the Floyd that passed away, that what happened to him. But that is not called for, that you burn down buildings that people work their life for and stuff. No, that I cannot see. And I hope that this never happens in our city. But we're still suffering because Target was closed. So I'm sorry. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And we share your sorrow and being sorry about what's going on and what's going on at Target locally. Thank you, Elizabeth, for expressing yourself here tonight. Okay, we'll give one more call for public comment before we close public comment. And I know that for some people, we're still getting used to raising your hands using this technology. So please try to raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any public coming forward, we'll close public comment. And in the name of time, we'll go very quickly through public comment questions. Dr. Karen asked for the council to take some action. And I know that Terry Siegrist and city manager have been out to these and our chief of police, I believe, to look at the concerns expressed about 10 days ago. And so at a future time, we'll ask our city manager, maybe at the end of our next city council meeting, to give an update on what he saw and what other department heads saw with him on their visit. But thank you, Karen, for staying involved with the Marina Equestrian Center. And I'm sorry if there's been any retaliatory behavior, that such bullying is related to what we're protesting around the nation about right now. And I'm sorry for that, if that's going on at the Marina Equestrian Center. Nan, on the same subject, asked if our Marina police are trained in conflict de-escalation and conflict resolution. And I would hope that our city, our police department chief, Tina, can answer that in the near future, but it could take some time to talk about that. Debbie pleaded with us basically to put up the holiday flags that were not put up recently. And recently I know it was a COVID concern. So let's keep that in mind with our city staff, that she's not the only one, that our community appreciates those holiday flags, though I know it takes time by the police and public works, and we're trying to reduce their time doing unnecessary tasks that aren't absolutely critical or essential, but that is a very important one. John condemned the use of force in Lafayette Park, Washington, D.C., and asked if the council could pass a resolution condemning that use, that display of brutality that we've all, many of us have seen that happened to disperse a peaceful crowd. And John, I think that that's not something we're going to do tonight on the fly, create that resolution, but it's something we can take up at our next city council meeting with some preparation by staff if they wanted to put that on our agenda to look at. John Gagan, thank you, John, for letting us know the Denny's traffic light is backing up traffic. Apparently there's potentially some issue there that needs to be fixed. And I think that Brian McMinn will probably be working on that tomorrow, or as soon as he possibly can with his crew. Brian McCarthy talked a little bit or a lot about deadly force, and following up on a seed he planted years ago, asking us to do what we can to act decisively to reduce the potential for violence between police and public. And I think a year ago he talked about police citizen level committee, so citizens can be involved in trying to reduce any tensions. And so Brian, keep talking to us and staff about that. Christina called out racism, and together pleading with all of us to work together to affect institutional change on racism in our country. And I think we all share that sentiment. Elizabeth talked about our local store, Target, being closed as just one example, one symptom of what's going on across the country since George Floyd was potentially murdered by police who are now in jail awaiting second-degree murder charges. If I missed anything of import or questions that other council members think we should address, please, council members, raise your hand. And Frank, you have your hand up, so go ahead, Frank, if you wanted to speak now on that relevant issues.
As to the request for resolution, I think it'd probably be more appropriate for a proclamation from the city, and I'm willing to do some research and talk to the city attorney about it, and I'll see what I can do between now and the next meeting.
Thank you for being so responsive to that request specifically to you from John Casa. Thank you, Frank. Okay, so thank you to everyone in the public. I apologize for cutting off your minute, even though we ourselves was late, and I am responsible for us being late, and I will try to do better in 2 weeks. I apologize for us being late and then having to cut your time off, although we may have asked to be cutting it anyway because of the large number of 82 people that may be speaking on another issue coming up. Okay, council, so now it's our turn to do what public just did. It's a very pivotal time in our nation's history, understandable if we all have something to say, and at the same time, we have to be considerate of time. So let's open it up to all the council members for anything that you want to say that's maybe on your mind tonight or your recent activities, and you'll have another chance to do so if we make it to the end of the agenda, which we may not. So this might be the best time to say what's on your mind. And Frank, your hand is still up. It might be my fault. Did you want to speak?
No, I should have it down.
Okay, and I'll try to.
Down now?
Not yet. There we go. I'll start out by saying we did have a town hall meeting last night, and Commander Eddie Anderson, who is a supervisor of all the patrolling, scheduling, all of the sworn officers that are on patrol doing operations, and Tina Nieto, our police chief, was on, and they both expressed concern about people, especially those people who have children of color, and what they can tell their children of color, and what their children of color must know, that how to stay out of trouble with police, that people who are not of color don't have to know, and how they're worried about children of color especially, but also they're worried about all of the public across the nation. And they pledged that this could not happen, will not happen in Marina. And I know that they will do their best in that regard. It's been an emotional time, and the shock that many of us feel from the brutality on many video clips around the nation since the George Floyd murder, but also the George Floyd murder itself. So our sympathies go out to his family, his community, and everybody in the nation that's been affected in a very sad way by what happened on May 25th and what has happened since then across the nation as people try to peacefully protest, and some go to looting and violent behavior in the protest. And that's not something that I think any of us support, but we do support all the peaceful protesters saying what they need to be say, and hopefully we can hear them and give them the space to be heard. In that regard, there was a 4-hour march protest in Seaside a few days ago, and the police from all different agencies joined the Seaside police to be very kind and helpful to the protesters, to give them all the space they needed to be safe and be heard and be able to basically go where they wanted down the city streets, and show solidarity for George Floyd and all the other people of color that have been murdered in some fashion leading up to George Floyd's murder. So I'll end there and just say thank you everyone for being here tonight. Do all that we can to stamp out racism when you see it, and especially to stamp it out to the best that we can within each of ourselves, because myself and everyone here may have some elements of racism, whether we're conscious of it or not. I know that I do. Even though I personally have experienced racism, I am not by any stretch perfect. And I hope that we all do what we can to be better people and try to spot the racism within ourselves so that we're kinder and fairer to those around us. Adam, why don't you go next?
Thanks. Just a brief comment. I had the occasion to email with our police chief, and I thank her for her comments. My question to her was, what can we as council members do as a legislative body to take steps to try to ensure that Marina continues to be a city that doesn't have a tragedy like this happen within our city? One thing that she mentioned is police officers can undergo implicit bias training. And I don't know if a 2-hour or 4-hour implicit bias training could actually overcome any implicit bias that a person might have. But she did say that if we would like the police department to undergo that training, that as we're going through our budget process, we should specifically call out funding for that type of training to make sure that something like that happens. And I just think that as we're going into the process of our city's budget, I think it's a good opportunity to look at what steps we can take as the legislative body to try to preserve our police department as an agency that doesn't have a reputation for police shootings or violence against minorities. So I hope that as we go in our budget process, we will take steps to look at how we can do that as council.
Thank you, Adam. Councilmember Berkeley.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your comments about the racism and implicit bias and the issues of white privilege that we don't always see. In fact, pretty much anybody who's part of our system has it on some degree. And so with that in mind, in the end of the month, there will be a series of conversations and trainings open to the public for free about addressing areas of white privilege and addressing systemic bias. And so at our next council meeting, I will be giving a list of what those agencies are that are doing it, because it's incredibly helpful. And we really get to use this time as an opportunity to heal as a community and grow. So I just want to thank you and thank everyone that's done work on this. And thank you, as Adam pointed out, thank you, Chief Nieto and the police force for the work you're already doing in keeping us in good shape. Thank you.
Okay. I forgot to give a shout out to Marina High School that had their graduation at Lumina Seca. And if you want to see a rainbow of colors in a group of people, you know, all of our graduations and commencement ceremonies are a wonderful example of the diversity of Marina. And they were all given as much honor as you could give someone who's graduating in their car at Raceway. Not a normal graduation circumstance, but everybody pitched in a lot from the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District to make it as wonderful a celebration as it possibly could be. And with a victory lap that everyone got to drive around Laguna Seca, I think that they'll remember that for a long time. And the last shout out is to the Marina Foundation, the City of Marina, and other partners that gave yet another 12th week, I think, of food distribution. Today they ran out of food. They had about 400 vehicles. And there again, there's an incredible diversity of people coming through the food distribution line in their cars, and the volunteers themselves show the diversity of the Marina community, although some are from Salinas and other cities. Thank you to the Latter-day Saints Church. They have provided 5 to 7 volunteers every single food event in Marina, and that's about 1/3 of the people that are showing up for these Tuesday and Friday events at Los Arbos Middle School. So thanks to all the volunteers and all the leaders involved with the food distribution. That's part of fighting racism, is working together and helping each other no matter the color of our skin. Okay. Thank you everyone for commenting during public comment and council comment. We have our consent agenda. And if there's no objection, I'd like to move to add to the consent agenda item 11A, which was an action taken by our city manager that needs to be ratified by our city council to extend the proclamation of a local emergency that prohibits evictions until July 31st, 2020, something that's been on the books, but it expired at the end of May, and it's been extended by our city manager, but it needs our ratification. If there's no objection, that we can move it to 11A. Let me just ask Bob Raffy, do we do this through a motion, Bob?
It would be appropriate to, yes, to just remove it from the action item agenda to the consent agenda, just for the purpose of a roll call vote on that item.
Okay, so I'll move
I would
11A.
move.
Thank you, Gail. Go ahead, Gail.
I would move that we move 11A to the consent agenda for ratification vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Berkeley seconds. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this motion? Elizabeth, I see your hand up, but it seems like every time I put it down, it goes back up. So I don't know if you want to speak to this motion, but go ahead if you do. Okay. All right. Seeing none, we'll go back to a roll call. Matt?
Councilmember Berkeley?
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton?
Yes.
Mayor Delgado?
Yes. Okay, thank you. That passes unanimously with the 5 of us voting. And we move to our full consent agenda, including that recently added item. Is there any member of the public that has a brief question or comment or wishes to pull an item off of our consent for more further discussion? So again, we're going to the public. If you have any brief comments on this package of items that we call our consent agenda. Okay, not seeing any hands going up from the public. Let's come back to council. Same question to all of you.
Yes.
Lisa, go ahead. Councilmember Berkeley.
Yes. Because I'd like to pull 8F3 and 8F1 for just a quick clarification.
Okay, for the quick clarification, would you mind addressing that and see if we have to pull it after we address that?
Sure, 1 second. Let me find
This
my...
regards our 4th of July activities where we charge the fireworks booths 6.75% surcharge to pay all the overtime needed to patrol for fireworks safety on the 4th of July.
Great, thank you for clarifying for the public. Are we expecting to have a 4th of July event, and are we expected to be having or permitting gatherings?
Tina or Lane? Lane, go ahead.
At this point, we haven't heard anything about moving into phase 3 or phase 4. That's a possibility at that point that gatherings would be allowed. But in relationship to this item, this is really the sale of the safe and sane fireworks. And so those are the ones that typically just families do in front of their homes. And so July 4th, if they have individuals for their families at this point, they can light those off in front of their homes. But at this point, there's no public gatherings.
And Lane, it's not known yet if fireworks booth sales will be allowed. If it was today, they may or may not be.
Can today I talked to Dr. Moreno, the Monterey County Health Director, and he said, yes, he's allowing the fireworks safe and sane sales.
Great. Thank you. Doug is the chief of our fire department and Lane is our assistant city manager. Does our police chief, Tina Nieto, have any input here?
Yes, sir. We just have to follow the protocol set by the CDC with our fireworks booth in the city, and we will, check with them like we do all the businesses to ensure that they are doing it safely. I know that the fireworks booths are are selling like masks and safety equipment to the nonprofits that are doing it. By July, we expect that the governor will probably allow smaller, what they call social bubbles, which will not be the large gatherings, but familiar type gatherings of people that wouldn't include people in your household that's set right now. So, so that's what we expect for 4th of July. And we've been working on the 4th of July plans because we expect it to be warm and we expect people will be getting out of the house due to COVID fever.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, you said you wanted to pull 8F3, which regards
I'm sorry, I said 8F3. I meant 8F4
okay.
For the environmental impact for downtown vitalization. And my question is, on page 2 of the staff report, the analysis is expected to be $40,000, but we're asking for 150, and that there will be another 2 projects that would be included in this. And it also says that we have to pay up front and then be reimbursed. So I have 2 questions. One, what are the other 2 grants that we're considering? And 2, if we don't need all of the money, does it stay with the state? And I guess there is a third part to the question. I'm sorry. Then the third part of the question is there any way that we would not be reimbursed for what we lay out?
Okay, thank you. Let's take those 3 questions. The first question is, what are the 2 other grants? Go ahead, Fred.
There are no other grants. The other projects that we've talked about have been beginning the general plan background information in terms of gathering research and also doing mapping in connection with that. Also, there are other things in connection with the downtown specific plan that we will be looking at. We've included information about accessory dwelling units as well in terms of updating that information for the state. This grant is really focused towards housing as you look at the information that's come from the state. And so each of these things will be working towards meeting those requirements. In terms of reimbursement from the state, we don't know of any reason why there wouldn't be reimbursement in connection with the grant, if I understood your question correctly, Councilmember Berkeley.
And then Fred, the last question was, if we don't use all the money, does it revert back to the state? Or does the state keep it?
Oh, it would, but yeah, I can guarantee you that all the money will be used in planning projects.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
So I don't need to pull those items anymore.
Okay. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
So just to follow up, we don't incur the cost unless we know the grant is going to be granted.
That's correct, Mayor Pro Tem. We
Okay.
absolutely would not incur the cost.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Does any member of the public wish to comment on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Seeing none, then we'll come to a roll call, please, Matt.
Councilmember Berkeley?
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton?
Yes.
And Mayor Delgado?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. That motion passes unanimously with the 5 of us. And we move on to I think it's going to be a quick series of 3 public hearings, similar to one another, each regarding a different landscape maintenance district, one of which Mayor Pro Tem Morton lives in, and so she'll do as she needs to somehow to recuse herself. But the first one is for Cypress Cove, which is off of Cardosa Avenue and Reservation Road down near Denny's. And so, Edry de Los Santos, do you want to launch into this? Or Brian McMinn?
We will take the pre.
And before you get started, Edry, I wanted to say thank you for Fred Agater, who helped us on those questions. Fred is the director of our Community Development Department. It's nice to have you with us, Fred, and thanks for your help and leadership on that. Okay, Edry.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Edry de Los Santos Engineering Division for the City Public Works Department. This is step 3 in a 4-step process to assess the special tax for the fiscal year 2021, specifically on this presentation and for this agenda item for Cypress Cove 2. Next slide, please. Cypress Cove was created in 1987 with 110 single-family homes. 2 acres of the subdivision are landscaping. We have 70 plus cypress trees, to which where the district got its name, and quite a bit of retaining walls. One citizen brought out in public comment through email that there's a lot of costs and amenities to this district that need to be maintained. Next slide, please. As part of the request from council and citizens last year, we started creating a new website for each of the districts. The websites not only have the information on the district, what the current assessment is, but also we update the websites with current planned work and any extra work to be done. They'll be posted on the website. We'll go into later how you could find out when work is going to be done and how you could be updated through a notify portion of the website.
Excuse me, Edry, if there's any way for you to magnify, zoom out, or zoom in so we can read it better, that would be great. But if not, then we'll continue.
I unfortunately don't control
Mr.
that.
Mayor, if you'll notice on your screen, I don't know if you have speaker view or not, but to the left side of it, there's a way to move all of us over so you can get a bigger screen.
Yeah, that does help. I think it might still be difficult on that last slide, but then Lisa, I can't see you as well.
If I make it bigger, Mr. Mayor, you lose some of the content on the slide as well.
Okay.
So that might be minimizing your participants might be a way to maximize your screen size.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. This slide here is showing what we've accomplished in this fiscal year. We had a lot of overgrown trees. Oh, go back. There we go. Thank you. We had a lot of overgrown. Back one slide. Thank you. We had a lot of overgrown trees on the utility lines. Some of the lower utilities, the utility companies themselves will not trim back the trees. It's the responsibility of the tree owners, which should be us. So we had a lot of work this year on Abdi Way, a little bit on Cardoza for the tree trimmings. You also notice here on the left, there we go. On some of those left pictures on Coral Way, we had a large tree that was uprooting the sidewalk and was going to be impacting the fire hydrant. So to alleviate any issues with utility safety, we fixed that this year as well, as you can see from the sequence of pictures there. For next year, we're looking to have irrigation improvements. Unfortunately, all the improvements for the district are large, as the current amenities are large. The current assessment for $180.78 per year per parcel, or $15 a month roughly per parcel, would help us get a new irrigation system next year. We're going to be upgrading the current outdated and poorly located backflow preventer closer to where Marina Coast Water has their requirements. But we'll have to wait another year in order to start planting the new trees that was planned as from 2016 to 2017 storms knocked them down on Cardoza Avenue. Which goes to the next slide. One resident was requesting an understanding of what it would take to increase the assessment for this specific assessment district. Because the assessment district was created before Prop 218 in 1996 or 1997, what we'd have to create was an overlay district. We did something similar to this back in 2015, or we tried to, for one of the districts. What this means is that we would take to council, we would first coordinate with the residents to see what their needs are, figure out the budget that we would take to council. Council again would establish a hearing and ballot date. We would wait 45 days to hold that hearing and do a ballot count. Now, if the number of ballots received state an approval more than the ballots received stated denial, we would go another 2 weeks to form and certify a new levy. If not, we would go into a process to either reduce the amount of work for the district or dissolve the district completely. The whole process, depending on calendar days and holidays, it takes around 100 days to process this. If the districts would like to start this type of process, we'd definitely be happy to meet with the residents. We're going to be starting to do that through the request from Cypress Cove with some of the residents there. And then as we go through the different districts, we'll see if the need is there as well. So for any questions and comments for the public in general, if you go to the city website and look up the landscape district's website specifically, there's a link there called Notify Me. And if you click there, see on the bottom, if you click there on the website, it'll take you to a page that allows you to receive text updates, phone, and email updates should we update the website with any new activity. Also, you can always go back to the activity or to the website to see any updates to the activity. My contact information is there, email and phone number should you have any questions specifically about the districts. And we're open to any questions for Cypress Cove too.
Okay, let's go to questions from any council members. This is a public hearing, and so council members will have a chance to comment again. I don't see any desire at this moment, so let us open the public hearing, and anyone can speak. We won't talk, we'll let you have up to 4 minutes as normal, since we don't have a lot of people wanting to talk. And we'll start with Nancy.
Okay, it's actually Dan.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is Dan Amadeo.
Thanks for joining us, Dan and Nancy.
Well, thank you, guys. Nancy has something to say later, but not on this subject. You know, since 2018, remember the big windstorm? We lost, I don't know how many cypress trees are left, but there's like half of what there used to be here now. We haven't replanted anything. We haven't replaced any irrigation so that any new trees that are going to be replanted can at least get water, even just a temporary drip system. But then I noticed that our friends from New Image have been around and they've done some work. They've knocked out some trees, which, by the way, why did the city or the landscape district pay for that? Shouldn't the Comcast lines or whoever owns those communications lines pay for that? It was intruding on their lines. And so why did we pay for that? So that's a question. Second question is, I saw, and I appreciate it again, New Image came in and they knocked out a bunch of dead brush and stuff on city property around the district, the Perk Pond area. Who paid for that? Did we pay for that or did the city pay for that? Then I noticed that when they came in and cut down a whole bunch of 2 and 3 foot tall grass, they did cut it down. They didn't remove anything. So instead of having 2 or 3 feet of dry grass, we now have 6 or 8 inches of dead grass that's matted. I'm sure the fire captain would appreciate that would create a minor bird problem versus 2 or 3 to dry grass. Then I'm sure you should have got Sid Williams' email, which I haven't heard anyone comment on other than generics. Yeah, we are being inundated with moles, ground squirrels, and everything else, and they're undermining some of the retaining walls. They're undermining, well, they're just undermining anywhere. So y'all need to think about this. We do not generate enough revenue for the landscape district to pay for what needs to be done. And one of the biggest things that needs to be done and is yet to be done, despite some of the limbing up of trees along the communications line on Abdi, is the large tree trimming hasn't been done. It hasn't been done for years. It continues not to be done. So Idri, we have sent emails, and you're aware of those. I'm not sure what else we can say. But in terms of a 218 election, is that the right term, 218?
Yes.
recognize under the current circumstances with the COVID thing and loss of jobs and whatever, there's no way a 218 election is going to pass anywhere, any place in this city right now. We're going to have to wait. So where are we spending our money and what are we paying for? I think that was part of what Sid Williams' emails about. What are we paying for? I think he called it substandard. You know, and that's what it is. They cut down all the grass, but they rake none of the grass out. So what are we paying for? I haven't seen them out here, by the way, in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So where are they at? What are they doing? What am I paying for? I would be happy to support getting the people of this neighborhood to increase the assessment rate. But under the circumstances, it's impossible. It's too impossible. We spend thousands of dollars trying to improve the entrance into the neighborhood. Thousands of dollars. And you know what? It's all dead. It's dead. It's dying. We spent thousands of dollars to accomplish basically nothing. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, this is Nancy. Is it all right if I make comment?
Yes, go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. I have commented before about the trees along Abdi and along Beach Road. They suffer from the same kinds of care, primarily because that's where the utility lines are. If you look along Cardoza, and I think that's where most people look when they think of our district, those trees have been limbed up. The dead trees, for the most part, have been pulled out. And periodically, they go through with a weed whacker to cut down the dry grass. But again, that's what they're doing. And the sidewalk that was lifted, where they removed a cypress tree on Coral Court, there have been complaints about that tree and that sidewalk for 4 years. One of the neighbors there passed away over a year ago, it might be 2 years ago now. And they'd gone to the city and said, who's supposed to take care of this? And it finally got done because now it involved a utility. This is what it takes. Oh, and by the way, there are still cones there. It's very recent that it got done, within the last 2 weeks. I walk my dog this neighborhood every day. And it's been in the last 2 weeks that that tree was removed and the new sidewalk put in. The fencing along Abdi that has been complained about for years, it has to be taken down. It's falling down, it's a hazard, and yet it hasn't been removed. That's not a big job, that's a small job. Our trees, to prune them, to make them safe, are probably $1,000 a tree. And for the council then to be told that if a 218 election doesn't work, that the council could just dissolve the district, that means you're leaving it up to a few homeowners who have trees behind their house. We have 2, that now it's up to us to spend $2,000 after paying in for over 30 years, paying in to have nothing done. And when the retaining walls eventually fail, it'll be up to the homeowners to take care of it. As you can tell, it just makes me angry because it's about saying, you know, it's really not our problem. It's the homeowner's problem. They need to take care of this. They need to get people to vote for the 218 election. Well, who's going to vote to spend more money when the money that they've already spent has done nothing but provide for substandard care? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Nancy, and Dan, before you. And we'll get to response when public comment is over. Does anyone else wish to speak on this matter before we close public comment? Okay, we will close the public hearing. And Edri, first question is, why did the city pay for using the district monies? Why did the city pay for the utility tree clearances instead of the utility company?
The only utility company that does actual maintenance on the utility lines, PG&E. AT&T, Comcast, they don't have the facilities or the bandwidth to maintain that kind of tree treatment. That's the information that we received.
So if they don't have the capacity, is it the city's responsibility to pay for their lack of capacity and do the work that to keep their line safe?
That's the instructions we received
from the
utility companies.
So Comcast tells the city when to do work and then the city does it?
No. So we received concern from the residents in the area. We reviewed what the concerns were, and specifically about the utility lines in this area. We talked with the arborist, with the contractor. The contractor agreed as well at what could be done, and he did it under the current contract, not as an extra cost, but as a maintenance cost.
So is there, in writing, an agreement that the city is responsible for utility line tree clearance?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so maybe we should take a look at that, and they maybe need to do just what we do, and that is to hire someone so they have the capacity, if it's legally their responsibility. Something to look into. Similarly, there was some city property that Dan Amadeo talked about where there was brush clearance paid out of the district funds for the city property. Or I guess his question is, did the city pay for this, or did the city use district fee monies to pay for this brush clearance on city property?
So there is landscaping around I get what he's talking about is the perk pond on Abdi Way, I'm assuming. And there are district areas, or so the immediate landscaping on the outside of the perk pond is part of the district. And so the district funds pays for the maintenance of that.
So if there is any city property, then the city would pay for that out of city funds and not the district funds to do any maintenance?
Yes.
Okay. The vertical grass gets cut, and Dan stated that recently it's been left as horizontal matted grass. Is that standard practice, or is that not what you want to happen? Do you want them to remove the cut grass?
So we'll have to review that specifically and where that is occurring. I know that due to the restrictions in the county, we've had limited and smaller crews coming out more often as they can under the current budget, of course. And so perhaps the cuttings have been left for another crew to pick up, or that they are not completely done with that work. So I'll have to review that with our contractor to see what the occurrence is.
So it's your understanding, Edry, that the standard practice is to remove cut grass and not leave it horizontal if it's, in clumps or piles?
It depends. Cut grass could be also utilized as a form of fertilizer in some areas, but I'm not entirely sure which areas this is occurring. So I'll have to coordinate with the contractor on that.
Okay. I did not see the Sid Williams email. I probably got it and didn't recognize it or didn't notice it. Were there any points in that Sid Williams email that you'd like to speak to?
Well, the reason why I included the walkthrough of what a Prop 218 process would be like is from that email. He had quite a few comments, as the Amadeus brought out, regarding improvements in the district that would require an added overlay district or an added assessment in order to take care of those properly on an annual basis. One of this is a regular tree maintenance. We've been trying to do that every other year as the budget allows in order to take care of the trees. We've done that along Beach, Cardoza, and Abdi every other year. We're going to go back to Beach in 2022. But it really requires an annual review, an annual arborist review, and an annual arborist maintenance. And we just don't have the cost currently to do that.
Okay. So when Dan states that there's not enough Abdi Way large tree maintenance being done, and Nancy states that there's trees along Abdi Way that need trimming, is your response that given the funding, you try to do it as much as possible?
Yeah, actually, if you go back maybe 3 slides, you'll see that we did Abdi tree trimming this year. Not just for the safety lines, but also, there we go, that slide right there, that's Abdi Way. also to clear away from the fence line and from properties. So we're trying to do as much as we can with the budget that we have, but as brought out before, a Prop 218 process would probably help us really take care of this district as it needs to be.
Okay, moles, squirrels, gophers undermining retaining walls and other infrastructure. Is abatement part of the contract?
Yes.
And so that is ongoing?
Correct.
Okay. It sounded the way that Dan mentioned it, he thought it wasn't sufficient, and maybe it's ongoing but not sufficient. So I hope, Dan, that you give more specifics to Edri, you and Nancy. Dan just stated that 218, trying to ask residents to give more money will fail. So what, if this is a rhetorical question, I suppose, what are we going to do? And what is being done? What are they doing with the money they're using? And I know this is kind of repeating ourselves a little bit to answer this question, but can you summarize what the money is being used for that is being spent, Edri?
Sorry about that. The money is being used for a weekly maintenance on the exterior of the district. Anything that's impacting the fencing, sidewalks in terms of trees within the district is maintained. The maintenance also covers any type of utility costs. We don't have water on right now, so it should be minimal. And all of the clearing of any rubbish and the clearance of sidewalks for the district on the exterior along Cardozo and Abdi, including the retaining wall. I forgot about that part.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last few sentences? It was hard to hear.
Sure. The sidewalks surrounding the district along Cardozo and Abdi, as well as over 1,000 feet of retaining wall.
Okay. Regarding irrigation, maybe this is the lack of irrigation, maybe this is part of the next response, that there were thousands of dollars, Dan stated, spent on the gateway to improve the vegetation, but it's either dying or dead. Can you speak to that expenditure?
That was some years ago where we did improvements to the gateway area. We planted the area, and then I believe we had an establishment period for the plants, and then I don't recall what happened as to why the plants were dying. I'll have to go back and check on that with Dan Rich.
Okay, we're moving to Nancy's comments. We did talk about the trees along Abdi Road, which was one of her comments. Another one was that she stated that there's an inexpensive fence removal project or fencing project along Abdi that needs to be done. Can you speak to that?
So what she's referring to, we're not entirely sure whether or not the fencing along Abdi, it's a very small fence on the hillside. We're not really sure if it's a structural fence for maintenance crews or if it's a decorative fence. So we're looking into what liabilities there would be should the fencing be removed, and we would have to replace it, or we could just remove it completely.
Okay, and the last thing I noted was Nancy's concern that retaining walls and tree trimming will become the cost of individual homeowners, were there not to be an increase in fee revenues because the people didn't want to say yes to a 218 vote. And then the district, you mentioned one option would be to dissolve the district. And her concern is that that would put all these expenses of large tree trimming and retaining wall maintenance and replacement on the homeowner's pocketbook. Can you speak to that?
That's actually incorrect. All of the improvements are within city right-of-way. So the city would have to take over the maintenance of that, and with our reduced staffing and the amount of maintenance would be a lot less than what they're currently receiving.
Okay. That's all I have, and we're going to go to Mayor Pro Tem Morton and Frank O'Connell, Councilmember Frank O'Connell, in a minute. Does anyone have any notes or questions that haven't been addressed that came up during public comment? Okay, let's go first then to Councilmember Morton and then Councilmember O'Connell.
Just following up what you said, Edri, about that the money is spent on weekly maintenance. And my question, then you also made the comment that there has been less maintenance, and obviously because of our shelter-in-place mandates. Did we get a reduction in the amount of money that went to the contractor for the period of time when there was no landscape services, and thus freeing up money to do something, putting that money towards some of the more long-term or neglected items that we need to address?
That's a very good question. So we actually had a trade-off on that because of the amounts of tree maintenance that was required along Abdi for this year, and because of the reduced staffing numbers required by the state for the crews in the field. We actually have we had a trade-off on costs. So the additional costs for the tree maintenance crew, which is a separate crew entirely that comes out to do tree maintenance, and the maintenance costs for the crews that just do the ground maintenance, they were able to do that simultaneously. So although the ground maintenance only had 2 men on staff per week, the tree maintenance crew were able to spread out further. And because we had that offset of costs, we're able to cover the costs of the trees with the overall monthly maintenance cost rather than an extra cost to the district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Councilmember O'Connell? I think you're muted, Frank.
Good to go?
Yes, good to go.
Yes, thank you. I've been on the council for nearly 12 years. Every year this comes up, not only with this particular landscape district, but the other two, and add on to a lock pattern. And it just seems that these complaints shouldn't even exist. This is very valuable property that people own. They want to make sure their property does not go down in value because of the appearance of the exteriors that are not really controlled by them. If you were an individual homeowner and you did not live in one of these districts, you hire a landscape company, they show up or they get fired. I'm really tired of hearing of a retaining wall that we still don't understand what exactly is the responsibility and who is responsible. And that I can understand where the Amadeus are coming from, that it's not only a case of what the money is being used for, but to have the nerve to even consider asking for more money when you're not satisfied with what you're getting for the money that you're spending. And it's not isolated. It's, as I say, it's been going on for the nearly 12 years that I've been on this council. And I just can imagine how tired they are of it, because I basically am tired of hearing the fact that we're not getting our money's worth. We should not have to call up this landscape company and tell them that the hedges or bushes are growing over the walkway. Get yourself out there and get it done. It's going on long before this coronavirus came up. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And Edri, can you remind us if that was the city's proposal or Sid Williams, the homeowner, to have us discuss the 218 increase process?
That was Sid.
And can you answer Frank's general theme, why year after year for 12 years or longer, this seems to be an annual concern, not enough done with the money spent?
Well, so in this, since I've been with the city, we've had this contract maybe 3 or 4 times out to bid. And I would say that for every time we would have the contract out to bid and we would do a job walk, I would have maybe 12 to 15 different companies coming out to do the job walk with us, which was a promising prospect that we'd have a lot of landscapers with the interest to do the work. But then as soon as we show them what the budget is for the work, we get down to 2 contractors, which tells us that as the years go on, I mean, some of these districts are from the 80s, we have one from the 90s, that as the costs have increased, the assessment has not increased. So the amounts that we have available to do the work is not enough to actually do the work well. We do the work as best we can with the money that we have, but in order to do the work as well as the residents would like it, we really need to either space out the work longer that you're trying to do, or go through a Prop 218 process to raise the rates or the assessments to a cost that would really represent what costs currently are today for landscape maintenance.
All right, Edria, I want to thank you for being in this frustrating position that you've been in. You know, you hear our frustrations, and you're the one that has more intimate knowledge of how frustrating it is. You've described the situation. So I just want to give you appreciation for the person who's responsible to handle what seems to be a no-win situation. And to the residents, I want to extend the same acknowledgement or empathy for your frustration. I would feel the same frustration and anger that you feel if there's just not enough money to do the job, and you have concerns about the quality of the work that is done, the way the money is spent. You know, there are justified frustrations all around. And as Councilmember O'Connell said, it's been going on for a long time. And where do we go from here, Edri or Lane Long, our city manager, to try to get out of this annual cycle?
Mayor, this is a very tough situation because of the process involved that is required in these landscape districts. There's a lot of administrative cost, no overhead that you just have to do. You have to have these public hearings, you have to prepare for them. And so a lot of money that is collected is used up through this administrative process that if we didn't have to go through that, we'd save a lot more money. But by law, we still have to do that. The bottom line is, as Edri kind of talked about, there's not enough money being generated to do the work that needs to be done, and certainly the work that the homeowners want. When I first started here, I think there's a discussion on, well, just eliminate the districts. And if you eliminate the districts, then what will happen is the level of work will drop down to basically what we do for the rest of the city. And that's not acceptable. And so we're really kind of stuck in this quandary of needs and expectations and not enough money to meet it, and a process that requires a certain amount of money go forward for all these public hearings and all this oversight and administrative engineering ahead of time. So I don't know of a solution. I think on the staff end, if we could eliminate the districts, that'd be the easiest thing. But those homeowners, they bought their homes and everything in expectation of that higher level of service in that district. That was a reason why they bought the homes. And so that's not really a solution to walk away from that either.
All right, Councilmember O'Connell, do you think, you know, with everything going on, that we should have some kind of a special meeting? Do you think that there's any solutions out there that we haven't thought about? Do you have any, or does any other council member have any ideas aside from going ahead tonight with what we have on the agenda? Do you want to add anything to a motion that would get us any closer to a solution? Frank, I'm sorry, but I think you're muted.
Sorry.
And now I just accidentally muted you, so that's my fault.
We're good now.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that the situation would be that a Prop 218 would be more likely to pass if the people were being asked to increase their assessment to maintain the condition. But when you're asking the people to possibly increase the assessment to bring the property up to a standard it should be at anyhow, you're most likely going to fail. So I think the problem is not with the city staff as much as the landscape company has to do what they're hired to do. And, you know, it's not just the case that's happened in the last 2 years. As I said earlier, and Mr. Mayor, you were there as well, 12 years ago, the problem existed then. Mr. Williams and Mr. Amadeo and Mr. Owen and Bill Genova, they have constantly contacted us for 12 years saying this isn't being done, this isn't being done. I've contacted Edry relating to lock padding, because I walk over there with my wife a lot and you have to duck your head to get under the bushes that shouldn't even be that high. There's no real justification for this, but I think, again, if we were able to say to the people, the Amadeus and Mr. Williams were able to say to the people, you know, we're just raising it to maintain, would be successful. But I'd be very reluctant to, if I were in that district or any of the districts, to increase the assessment when I'm not getting my money's worth. The frustration continues, but it shouldn't. It just simply shouldn't. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Let's go to Councilmember Morton and then hopefully a motion to move on. And
It is very frustrating, and I'm looking at our staff report, page 9. And so every homeowner is paying approximately $181 a year for a generation of 19,886. The landscape maintenance portion of that money is $6,120, which is $500 a month. And it does seem, when you read the description of the responsibility for maintenance that's also in our staff report in the Cypress Cove Landscape Maintenance Assessment District, and there's a paragraph about what is supposed to be maintained appearing on page 6, which is landscaping consists of hydro-seeded areas, ground cover, shrubs, trees, irrigation, pipelines, controllers, valves, sprinklers, masonry, retaining walls, and electrical service. It's an impossibility the way that it's structured. So either you have to increase the amount of money if you're going to do the scope of services, or determine what services should be done at a very professional level. And I do understand what Edry is saying. He takes people out and he has 9, I don't remember if he said 7 people, contractors interested. And then you say to do all of this shrubbery, seed, where there's grass, et cetera, that it's $500 a month. It's not enticing. And I don't know if there's any way. I know we have attorney costs $400 or legal costs $400. We've got engineering costs of $2,000 that we as a city are trying to recoup what it costs for us to do this. So you have $5,000 of the $19,000 going to overhead. I don't know if there's a way to simplify the overhead, but I do, as Frank said, we've heard this year in, year out, and we hear it with regard to all of the districts, that the level of just sheer maintenance, the blow, mow, and go, whatever it's called, mow, blow, and go, is not at a level that I would think you would want to pay $500 a month for.
thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem Morton. I'll motion that we consider adopting this resolution so that some money does get spent, and authorize the city clerk to file the copy of the diagram and assessment with the auditor controller prior to August 3rd of this year.
Second.
All right. Matt, if you could give us a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Berkeley, Councilmember Berkeley,
Can't, of course, Lisa, you're muted, so we can't hear you. And if
give
it's
us a
my
thumbs
fault,
up.
you don't show as being muted, but we don't hear you. Now you show as being muted, but you can give a thumbs up for now. Okay, that's a yes vote.
Councilmember Urrutia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
and Mayor Delgado.
Yes, that motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And we have 2 more public hearings before the cannabis public hearings.
Mr. Mayor,
I might be a little quicker. Our city attorney, Bob Rathie, go ahead, Bob.
just I have one, and this one is definitely on me. In reviewing the agenda, I would like to recommend that the city council move to just reopen the consent agenda for the sole purpose and conducting a roll call vote on item 8L1, which is the adoption of prima facie speed limits by ordinance. All ordinance, according to the city council procedures, need to have a roll call vote. I apologize for having missed that on our trip through the consent agenda.
Bob, is there a motion that's needed or just to go into the roll call vote?
A motion would be to just reopen the consent agenda for the sole purpose of conducting a roll call vote on item 8L1.
Okay, so please, Matt, let's have a
move we-
roll call vote. We don't need a motion, I think. Councilmember, just if we can have a roll call vote on item 8L1, Matt, which is regarding our prima facie speed limits.
Councilmember Berkeley?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
Councilmember Utia?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton?
Yes.
Mayor Delgado?
Yes. And Councilmember Mario Pro Tem Morton, I'm sorry if I was rude to you. I didn't mean to be. I'm kind of just watching the clock. Okay.
My apologies for that diversion. I know we have a busy evening.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your patience with my handling of this meeting. Okay, so we go to a similar item, Seabreeze Landscape Maintenance District. Go ahead, Edry, and thank you.
Okay. Seabreeze was formed in 1996, just before the Prop 218 process. So unfortunately, it's not part of it, not grandfathered in. But we do have 37 residential lots there, just under half an acre of landscaping. The major assessment or the major review of the district this year has been the retaining. We've been trying to figure out how can we address this specific need. We've talked with some of the residents along this corridor that have specific concerns with the retaining wall, or it's really a sound wall, of what best approach should we do. We talked with the building department on the best approaches as well in terms of structure and use. So we come up with these two different cost proposals that we're going to be taking to the residents this coming year in fiscal year 2021. We'll talk to the residents as a whole and then the residents along the corridor with the sound wall to see which approach they would like to take. And then we'll talk about in fiscal year 2021 in the budget process for 21-22 next year of what approach we're going to take. We have a budget for next year to replace some panel walls, 2 panel walls. But if we're going to go for the full replacement route, we definitely bring that to the council after the district decides on that. Again, if you go to the next slide, as every district, they have the ability to sign up for any type of notification. They can see on the bottom, each district has a specific page and has a specific notification they could sign up for. And if they have any specific questions about the district, you could call or email me with the contact information there.
Thank you, Edry. Okay, first let's give an opportunity for council members, and then we'll open up the public hearing to the public. Not seeing any hands. Let's go to the public and start the public hearing. Elizabeth, your hand is up. So Elizabeth Billingsley, if you had something that you wanted to contribute, please go ahead. All right, Elizabeth, you're not muted.
My hand is down.
Okay.
I don't have no questions.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right.
My seat keeps going up.
Okay. So one more chance for anyone from the public to speak on this matter. All right, let's come back to City Council for any final comments or a motion. I'll motion that we approve the resolution before us and authorize the city clerk to file a certified copy and pass that through the auditor controller prior to August 3rd.
Second.
All right, roll call, please. A second by Councilmember Urrutia. Thank you, Matt.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
and Mayor Delgado.
Yes. All right, thank you. That motion passes unanimously 5-0. And I don't know how you do this virtually.
I am going to leave the room. I'm going to turn my stuff off here. Would somebody text me when you're finished?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Berkeley is going to text you. Okay, Edry, this regards a similar matter, but for this time, the Monterey Bay Estates Lighting and Landscape Maintenance Assessment District.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I would point out that in this age of remote meetings, the city attorneys in California have determined that when someone's recusing themselves from a particular matter, they should explain the conflict recusal, which I believe for Councilmember Morton is she resides in this district. The council member should then virtually leave the room by turning off the video, muting themselves, but they may still keep listening to the meeting. So that would be the protocol.
So Gail, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you can, you're welcome to listen and not participate actively. Thank you, Bob. Okay, Edry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Monterey Bay Estates in 1989 was formed with 162 homes, a little over 2 acres of landscaping, and now upgraded 41 street lights with LED lighting. The district itself has some trees on the southern end of Crescent Avenue that the residents have requested to be removed and replaced. I've been coordinating with a couple of residents on maintenance along this corridor, and we've been trying to address their needs as they come up. So you'll see for this year, irrigation improvements to reach these trees. I don't think the irrigation has been turned on for quite some time. Is being conducted, and it should be finished this month. And then for next year, we'll be removing these trees, replacing them with appropriate trees recommended by some of the members of this district. We'll be reviewing that against planning's approved tree list for the city. But I think the recommendations are good. I think some were coastal live oak. And so we'll be removing, replacing the trees, upgrading the irrigation, installing the irrigation. As currently noted for all the districts, this district specifically, because the Prop 218 process did not go through in 2015 or 2016, the amount of maintenance has been reduced. But we are able to accomplish this work because we've been building up a reserve over several years. So the current assessment is $77.14 or $6.43 a month for the district is proposed not to change for this coming fiscal year.
Edry, no change you just mentioned, but there is an increase in expenses proposed of about $6,000. Can you speak to that?
For fiscal year 2021, that's the removal and replacement of the trees on the southern end of Crescent Avenue. So if you go back there.
Yeah, I'm looking on page 6 of the staff report showing 19,000, whereas last year it was 13,000 total expenditures.
So you'll see that on the extreme right and extreme left of the picture, those trees have died from disease. So those are the trees, and there's 2 more just to the south of that. We're looking north, so just behind us, 2 more trees that need to be removed and replaced.
Okay, so those 4 trees to remove cost about $6,000, and that's the difference between the years?
Correct. To remove, replace, and upgrade the irrigation.
Okay, so you're going to replace the trees included in a $7,000 expense?
Yes.
And that's what the Coast Live Oaks. And I think we got some comments from Mike Owen via email suggesting, I believe, that we start with small replacements, that is a 1 gallon or a 3 gallon, which might be 2 feet tall or smaller, rather than a 15 gallon that might be 8 feet or taller. Is that something that you're considering, or is that still to be determined at that detailed level?
We haven't gotten down to that detail level. At that point, we don't know actually what the watering needs will be. So we'll have to assess Not just the size, but also the maintenance period, how long the irrigation will need to be turned on for these trees, and the cost to the district for that.
Okay, and I think in Mike's email, he also mentioned that volunteers would be willing to water the trees. Has that been utilized in the past on an official basis? And is that something that you think has merit?
I don't know of any official irrigation volunteer groups. Brian, do you know of any that have requested? I don't know of any that have requested for irrigation.
No groups. I don't know if Mr. Owen has his hand up, if maybe he can clarify that in his comments, but we haven't had any groups come forward.
So we have the Marina Tree and Garden Club and Citizens for Sustainable Marina and other groups. I wonder if they'd be willing to do something like that if it was going to save a lot of irrigation costs, or individuals such as Mike Owen. And like you said, we'll go to Mike Owen here very shortly. Okay, any other questions for Edri or Brian before we move to a public hearing? All right, then let's open the public hearing. And Elizabeth, your hand is up. And you might be muted on your end, Elizabeth. And we'll go to Mike Owen and come back to you, Elizabeth, if you intended to speak. Oh, go ahead, Elizabeth. We can hear you now.
I don't have my hand up. I don't know why. I'm blue. That means hand down. You keep calling on me, Bruce.
Okay.
I'm sitting here. Now my hand is raised, see? But I put it down, and that's it. I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, let's go to Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mike, thanks for
being. Thank you for letting me know that you read the emails that I sent to staff and to council. Bottom line, I support the resolution. I haven't heard of any complaints. I'm really happy that most of the longstanding dead bushes have been removed. As I said in the email, the concerns about excessive trimming of the Indian hawthorn bush has been addressed by staff. In 2015, the 218 referendum was decisively voted down, and it was put on the ballot because of the need to increase the rates to pay for the irrigation system. And the irrigation system was discontinued since then because there wasn't money to do it. And there was a case made that we didn't need it. The landscaping has done well since then, as far as like no complaints from the residents. And so I really questioned the need for not only having the irrigation system operating costs come up again, but the additional cost to repair it to bring it up to standards. So I mentioned Coast Live Oaks, and the example in my side yard, I have 2 Coast Live Oaks that were planted like blue jays number of years ago, and they're doing well. At the corner of Windy Hill Park, there is now an established oak grove that were planted by blue jays with no irrigation. So I don't know what the mindset of the city is that sort of like expects that they need an irrigation system to plant, larger trees for visual impact, to, like end up with situations like in Cypress Cove where you have enormous trees and all the additional cost, and effects that go along with that. If the city had a description that for all sorts of reasons, and I can provide you some narrative from coordinating with the Tree and Garden Club and the Tree Committee, that they were planting small seedlings or like maybe 1 gallon sizes as an attempt to conserve water with like preserving the environment for sustainable growth as an exercise. I could put that on the next door neighbor website there are individuals that are already doing their own trimming, you know, like along the assessment district. They've been trimming their bushes for a long time. So I don't think it would be, I mean, if the neighbors were aware that this was an effort that was, for all the reasons I sort of tried to, you know, say environmentally conscious, sustainability, preserving water, and this is, if it works, I don't know why you couldn't do it over at Cypress Cove. If there's whatever replanting is needed, I mean, you don't need to do an irrigation system necessarily for new plantings, because I mean, if they don't work out, replacement is like a couple of dollars for a seedling, or you know, maybe it's $5. But I would like this sort of like new approach when you're asking the city manager and everybody else like that, are there any new approaches to address at least some of these concerns about escalating administrative costs and the same work standards? You just don't, there's ways to adapt the work standards to new conditions, new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, let's go to Grace Silva Centella.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks for joining us, Grace.
Hi, Mayor and council members. I have to apologize. The bad thing about Zoom is you tend to multitask, which means you're often not catching everything that's being said. So I just wanted, was it $6,000 to remove 4 Myoporum trees, upgrade the irrigation, and plant some replacement trees? Was that correct?
7,000.
7,000.
Tree
Okay.
removal and replacement.
Okay, so I think you all need to be provided a breakdown of that cost. The Marina Tree and Garden Club just paid $150 for 3 5-gallon Tristania trees, gopher baskets, and soil amendment that were planted on the corner of Vista del Camino and Martin Circle. And they were planted by the homeowner and one of our garden club members. $7,000 just seems like a little crazy there. So if you all could get a breakdown on that, and I'm in total agreement with Mike, you need to find some nice little small trees that are going to adapt themselves quickly and not going to need a tremendous amount of care or not become strong on their own. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grace. Any other public comment before we close the public hearing? Okay. Elizabeth, I'm assuming your hand is up, but you don't intend it to be. But I have to give you the chance to let us know if I'm wrong. Okay. I've lowered your hand, and you can raise it again if you intended to speak, Elizabeth. Okay. So we'll close the public hearing and talk about the price and the size again of the trees we're going to use. Adria, I suppose that you're authorized, if we approve this tonight, to spend up to $7,000 for removal and replacing, but you're also authorized to spend less than that. So do you have any comments on looking into options of tree replacement costs?
We would definitely be open to speaking with the residents regarding that.
Okay. Thank you. And I know the city staff has experience down at the roundabout at Beach Road and Del Monte Boulevard, where we've tried a few different trees, and now the smaller oak tree seems to be working out a little better than the larger oak tree that was planted and didn't make it. Is that true, Edry?
Yes, the current oak tree is doing well.
Okay. Now, when it gets taller, it has more wind exposure. We'll see if it survives. We've planted about 50 trees outside the Marina Library, oak trees, and most of them are doing quite well in their 6th year, but it wasn't a fast grow situation, and they didn't get a lot of irrigation for the first few years. But the last couple of years, they've gotten quite a bit of irrigation, and it's made a big difference. So I think if you want them to grow faster, you give them more water, and maybe you protect them from the wind if they're in a windy location. But I don't think that this example in front of us is a windy location. I could be wrong, but I think not. Okay, so council, if you have any comments you want to make, or someone wants to make a motion, this would be the right time.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the city clerk to file a certified copy of the diagram and assessment with the Monterey County Auditor Controller prior to Friday, August 3rd, 2020. And that that Public Works look into finding a lower cost for the trees.
All right, and I think that it probably includes adopting the resolution that we have in front of us.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, and adopting the resolution in front of us.
Okay, I'll second that and like to go to Frank O'Connell. I just saw your hand was up, Frank. I wasn't.
I would just like Mr. Owen to have his Blue Jays fly over my property.
Okay. So, Mike, if those scrub jays are not under contract, could you talk to them about what they can do for Frank?
Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder how many acorns they plant for a few of those to go. All right, if we can have a roll call, please, Matt.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
No, she's not. She's recused herself.
Oh, sorry about that. Mayor Delgado.
Yes, so that motion passes 4 to 0 to 1 with a kind of a 1 abstention. But with the 4 of us voting, it's unanimous. And if we could ask Councilmember Morton to join us again, if she's not already listening, that would be great.
Yes,
okay. And we'll move now to the last public hearing of the night, which is regarding the cannabis use permits. And who's going to start us off here? Is that Matt, you?
It'll be me, Christy. Here,
Yeah. I'm sorry, Christy.
I'll say
Thank you.
hello and go ahead and share my screen. So just give me a second.
And Christy, just for the public, can you tell us your position? And
Sorry, I'm Christy Hopper, the Planning Services Manager. And Matt, can you enable my screen share, please?
How are you, Christy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's see. There we go. Okay, is that all right?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, good. Let me minimize you all so I can see you or see what I'm doing. So tonight you're going to be looking at Planning Commission recommendation for resolutions that would be approving a certain number of cannabis conditional use permits to operate combined adult use and medical commercial cannabis dispensaries. And the locations that are being proposed are at 3016, 3100, 3112 through 3114, and 3170 Del Monte Boulevard, and 234 to 242 Reservation Road. I will note that we've added, clarified the exact addresses for the 3112 to 3114 Del Monte Boulevard and 234 to 242 Reservation Road because they are taking up multiple tenant spaces. November of 2018, the Marina voters passed an ordinance that would allow cannabis businesses subject to the issuance of a conditional use permit. That ordinance went into effect of April of last year, and it does provide the regulatory framework for commercial cannabis activities. With regard to dispensaries, which is all we're considering this evening, the ordinance that was adopted by the voters would allow no more than 3 medical cannabis dispensaries or no more than 3 adult use cannabis dispensaries at any one time. And if all the dispensaries combine medical and adult use, which is the case with all 5 of these applications, there would be a maximum of 3 businesses. So due to the limited number of permits that were available, there was a limited application period, and those applications were accepted between April 8th of 2019 and June 7th of 2019. So this is a competitive review process. The applications, the initial applications were reviewed by HDL Companies, and this is a company that is a consulting firm that specializes in cannabis regulations. They were reviewed against selection criteria guidelines in the ordinance. There was an initial scoring that was provided. After that initial scoring, the applications were permitted to amend and combine to optimize scores. For example, two businesses could come together to optimize their scores. That final scoring was submitted to the city, and 5 groups were determined eligible to apply for these conditional use permits. Each group received a perfect or near perfect score, and I have those scores that we'll be showing in a later slide. Following that process, applications for the use permits were submitted to the Planning Division in November and December of 2019. The Planning Commission reviewed those applications on May 14th of 2020 and made recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will then, tonight will review those applications and will select or can select up to 3 permits. So the Council staff report does summarize all 5 applications. I will note, and I'm hoping that you all received the, it would be attachment B, that was a belated submittal in order to get the draft Planning Commission minutes done. They're 11 pages long, so I hope you're all able to skim through those that summarized the points of discussion at Planning Commission. The applications you're looking at tonight, and this is in order of the top 4, 100% scoring, and then the 5th that scored at 94.74. So we're looking at element 7 of Marina for the 234 to 242 Reservation Road, higher level of care at 3016 Del Monte, Pacific Roots at 3100 Del Monte, and then a combined JC Marina Ventures and Marina Trading Company at 3112, 3114 Del Monte, and SGI Marina at 3170 Del Monte. So the standard requirements for all permits, they do have to go through under permitting and licensing. They have to get the conditional use permit. There is an operating agreement that they will enter into with the city to ensure the safety and continued neighborhood compatibility and compliance with local and state regulations. There's also a state license that they're required to be issued, and those are very strict regulations on security and product tracking, as well as a marina business license. Site security is also required as part of the ordinance with parking lot lighting. It deals with security guard services, security cameras, alarm systems, secured entries, and secured product storage. Security plans were submitted to the city, and they were reviewed by the Marina Police Department. Also, surveillance footage is required to be shared with Marina PD. The police department is to be notified of any security breaches and also comply with all requirements of the police department. The ordinance also includes environmental and neighborhood compatibility concerns. So with dispensaries, environmental and nuisance concerns are really less pertinent to dispensaries as opposed to, for example, manufacture and cultivation. There's no real particular needs with regard to water and energy or hazardous materials in their operation. Odor concerns are also very minimal due to the very strict packaging requirements in dispensaries, but the business is still required to maintain an odor prevention system, and no cannabis odors can be detected by sight or smell outside of the business. Signage is also addressed in the ordinance, which requires that no outside graphic is displayed that describing cannabis, for example, a marijuana leaf. And noise-related nuisances are really not anticipated because of the indoor operation. The applicants also went through a zoning and sensitive use buffering. So there was permit zones that are identified in the ordinance for commercial cannabis activities that would be included at our airport, in business parks, in a transitional zoning district, which currently does not exist in the city, and in our retail and commercial districts. Also, the subject applications would be located either in the C1, C2, or PC districts, which is consistent with the ordinance. They are also not permitted to be located within 600 feet of a school, K through 12, or a youth center when the license is issued. And all the applications comply with this requirement. I will note that all of the applicants had to go through basically it was a zoning compliance review, and the city utilized GIS to create those buffers and identify those businesses that or those sites that would be eligible. So HDL, in their evaluation and the initial submittal, went through a point system in scoring the operations. So your business plan would score 5 points if it demonstrates successful business operation, not necessarily cannabis related, and have a similar scale of those annual revenues for at least 2 years, and or have capital sufficient to ensure at least 1 year of operation. If they did not demonstrate those 2 points, 0 points were awarded. For local enterprise and community benefits, there was a total of 8 points, and those could include commitment to employing City of Marina residents, working with Marina businesses, including with capital, sponsoring nonprofits, and other similar specific commitments. 1 point was awarded for every Marina resident the business commits to employ, and also 1 point for every annual substantial commitment to nonprofit or business within Marina. For neighborhood compatibility, the 5 points were available if the applicant demonstrated support of the majority of the property owners within 200 feet of the site, and 0 points were awarded if the majority of owners did not support. The safety and security plan, as stated before, was reviewed by Marina Police Department. There was a scoring of inadequate, adequate, or exemplary. If it was inadequate, they were not permitted to proceed with the application. An adequate security plan received 10 points, exemplary was 20. So this is kind of the overall, all of this is available on the website, so it's very, very small, but this just kind of shows you the applicants that came in, how they were scored, and then rated them with the top 1 and 2, and I've got a better slide. This one shows the top 5 that are moving forward with their overall scores here on the right-hand side. So for the most part, all of them scored very, very high in all of the categories. There were just 2 points lower for SGI Marina LLC under local enterprise and community benefits. All of the applications are posted to the city's website in a redacted form to protect, of course, sensitive material. And this is the city's website where those applications can be found. The Planning Commission, as stated on May 14th, reviewed all 5 applications and did forward to the City Council findings and conditions of approval for all 5 applications. There are special conditions that were added for locations that require on and off site improvements, and we'll go through those. The findings that are used are similar, are actually exactly the same in all 5 resolutions, so I'm only going to review them once. The project would comply with the requirements of state, city, and additional conditions of a dispensary license, will not result in significant unavoidable impacts on the environment, and that includes, because they're within a completely enclosed building, and noise and odor mitigation planned and integrated, and no hazardous materials or systems are utilized. There's adequate quality control to ensure the dispensary will operate in accordance with industry standards. Adequate measures that address federal enforcement priorities, restricting access to minors, and ensuring cannabis and cannabis products are not supplied to unlicensed and unpermitted persons within the state and not be distributed outside of the state. They're also then required they would obtain valid and fully executed commercial cannabis use permit prior to commencing operation and maintain the permit in good standing. And also entering into the operating agreement with the city to ensure ongoing neighborhood compatibility and compliance with city regulations. They are required to renew the cannabis use permit and operating agreement annually and also will operate in good standing with all permits and licenses required by law. So to go in the five areas, and I've got them all highlighted as we go through so we don't lose track of where we are. But we've got 3016 Del Monte here at the southern portion of Central Marina, the 3100 Del Monte, which is the former Mortimer site. Then we have 3112, 3114 Del Monte Avenue, which is the Mast Center here. We have 3170 Del Monte, which is up adjacent to the shopping center at, let's say, a reservation in Del Monte. And then the 234 to 242 Reservation Road, which is the building that sits right behind Taco Bell. So we'll go into the first one. We're going to actually start here over on Reservation Road, Element 7 at 234, 242 Reservation. This would convert a 5,000 square foot building. And the initial proposal was dispensary and manufacturing. We understand, I think that they've sort of changed to just dispensary now. If they would want to go into manufacturing in the future, it's a separate administrative permit. So this would have the dispensary, office, storage, restroom, and also holistic wellness treatment rooms, which I think you'll hear more about from the applicant. They're proposing to employ 10 to 15 employees with hours of operation from 10 to 10. This is the site. It's the former Taco Bell offices here in the backside of Taco Bell. The applicant will go more into their floor plan as far as their operations, but a lot of these you'll see are very similar with a display area. There's security areas, offices, break areas, some distribution areas potentially. The manufacturing, this floor plan may change if they move part of the dispenser or go into some other type of operation, such as delivery. Staff's review found that this proposal is compliant with the municipal code and general plan. It's consistent with the C1 zoning and retail service land use. This is permitted with a conditional use permit, and any exterior changes and signs would require design review. The project complies with all development standards. It is proposed in an area where the use is compatible with the surrounding uses, and there's really no substantial concerns with the siting of the project. So the conditions of approval for this one included in the resolution are requirements that are very standard to the operation of a commercial cannabis dispensary. The second applicant is Higher Level of Care Marina, and that's at 3016 Del Monte Avenue. Currently, and we'll go through the site plan on this, there's a old kind of defunct gas station. Right now it's home to JT Plumbing. And this would be the conversion of a 4,067 square foot building for a dispensary. They also have, of course, the retail area, storage, office, and restroom. There's a portion that they're reserving for future manufacturing and distribution, which would be an administrative permit, and design review would be required for exterior and site modifications. This business is proposing approximately 20 employees with hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. This kind of goes into their proposed site plan. It was actually the original site plan. This is where the dispensary would be located. There's an existing gas canopy, a vehicle service building over here, and then the proposal would be to move the JT Plumbing into this warehouse building over here. This is their proposed floor plan with the display area here on this side of the building. All of their storage and other more secured areas are over moving to the east, and then future manufacturing on the easternmost side of the building. This application is also consistent with its C2 zoning and retail service land use. It would receive the conditional use permit if selected by the council, and the exterior and site changes and signs require design review. So due to the site conditions on the site, all of these applications went before a group of city staff to take a look at all of them. There are recommendations to require public improvements on the site. And that would include extension of an existing sidewalk from the north of the site to a 24-foot driveway and continuing to the south boundary of the site. Also, addition of landscaping strip between the road and the sidewalk, defining and separation of the sidewalk and driveway, closure of an existing southern driveway, and removal of existing gas pumps and canopy. So just so you understand what we're talking about here, the extension of the sidewalk. So the sidewalk ends here at this property and sort of goes into nowhere. Right now there are there are 3 points of access to this site. This road here is actually, there's an easement on the adjacent property to access this, this property here. It's at the vacant 5-acre parcel here. And so in looking at this with the police department especially, there's a requirement to close off this driveway here because of the potential if a robbery would occur, somebody pulls up here, that they could then really quickly pop over here, go the wrong way on the off-ramp and head south on Highway 1. So there's a safety concern here, and the applicant's very aware of this. Also looking at, just because of the congestion on the site and also not really sure what's happening with this the canopy to clean up the site, there'd be the requirement to remove that. This kind of gives an idea of what that could look like on the site with the extension of the sidewalk, closing in of the driveway, and redoing the parking area. The third applicant is Pacific Roots at 3100 Del Monte Boulevard, and they're proposing to convert a 1,907 square foot tenant space in a 2,922 square foot building to the dispensary. Also has the same amenities that we talked about before and would require design review for exterior modifications. This business proposes 11 to 23 employees with hours from 9 a.m. So aerial view of the site. This is the former Mortimer's that we're talking about here. It is currently a closed business. Carmel Avenue comes in here. We've got this perpendicular parking coming in on the side of Carmel, and also the parking that comes in on Del Monte Avenue. Similar to the other site, you'll see that the local improvements, the curb gutter, sidewalk, and any landscaping has not been installed for this site. So this gives a kind of an overview of it. It's sort of an odd-shaped parcel. It includes the hotel that's next to it, and shows the existing configuration of the parking especially. You'll see that it's an odd-shaped, kind of an angled property line, and you'll see that some of the parking spots actually go into and are truncated down just to meet the property line. On Carmel Avenue, these parking spaces are completely non-compliant because they do project into the public right-of-way. And I will note that there is an official plan line for Carmel Avenue that calls for the widening of Carmel that takes the right-of-way almost up to the building here. So that's something that if this conditional use permit is approved, we'll have to have a later discussion about. This is their proposed floor plan, entering the lobby from the front of the building. Right now, it looks like they are proposing to close off the southern side of the building. I understand from the Planning Commission meeting, they may look at doing some openings on that side. Cannabis sales would be located here, and then there's storage and processing, order processing and that type of thing in the rest of the building. This one is also the uses consistent with the C1 zoning, and the retail service land use would be permitted with a conditional use permit, and it would need to go through design review. So due to the existing site conditions on this site, there's also the recommendation of a requirement of public improvements. That would be constructing curb gutter and sidewalk along Del Monte Boulevard and Carmel Avenue, in addition of landscape strip between the road and sidewalk. So as we stated, the parking on Carmel Avenue, existing parking is substandard and it crosses property lines, does not permit leaving the site in a forward direction, which is required by our city standards. These spaces would need to be eliminated with local improvements. The parking at Del Monte Avenue, the local improvements, adding a curb gutter and sidewalk within, as this will decide exactly how that's supposed to look, those improvements would eliminate most, if not all, of those spaces in front of the building. It's also a safety issue if anyone's tried to park over here. Right now, you pull in and you back out partially into Del Monte Avenue in order to go north. So the establishment of the dispensary on the site with the requirement for local improvements would result in overall insufficient parking for the site. So there's a condition of approval in the resolution that the applicant would be required to submit revised plans to show the compliant parking or find an alternative means of compliance. And that could be in the form of shared parking with a neighboring property. Moving right next door to 3112, 3114 Del Monte, the JC Marina Ventures LLC and Marina Trading Company LLC, proposing to go into this building. This would be 2,200 square foot tenant spaces. It's 2 tenant spaces with similar amenities as we talked about before. It's located in an existing shopping center, and any exterior modifications require design review. This business is looking to employ approximately 16 employees with the hours of operation from 10 to 10. Looking at an overall aerial view, the tenant spaces we're talking about, I'm circling with my cursor here. So once again, a floor plan pretty similar to what we've seen before with your display area and then the back of house operations. And this is highlighting just the area once again. This application is also consistent with its zoning and land use and would be with the receipt of a conditional use permit, and any exterior modifications would require design review. So this project complies with all the development standards proposed in the area where the use is compatible. There's really no concerns with the siting of the project, and it would have the standard conditions of approval for operation of a commercial cannabis dispensary. The fifth and final applicant is SGI Marina LLC, proposing to locate it at 3170 Del Monte Boulevard. This is a 2,744 square foot building for a dispensary with retail area, storage, office, and restroom. They're looking to employ approximately 12 employees with hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Circled on the screen is the building. It is actually a separate parcel from the shopping center over here. So this is a separate parcel with a separate parking lot. There's no access to this parking lot from the larger shopping center. The floor plan for this site shows a large display area and service area here, as well as their offices, restrooms, and other security areas. This property is located within the PC or planned commercial zoning area, and it is consistent with that zoning with the use permit, and exterior site changes would require design review. So due to the existing site conditions, and we'll look at that too, staff is also and the Planning Commission is also recommending some additional public improvements, and that would be development of a sidewalk in place of a dirt path at Del Monte Avenue, and also have improve a landscape strip between the road and the sidewalk. I just want to show you really quickly what I'm talking about. So the sidewalk kind of comes up here, and then it stops and it converts into a dirt path that connects to a sidewalk up here. So looking at the improvements happening right in this area. And just as a side, these requirements of public improvements as an ordinance in our municipal code, local improvements were identified as not have been installed with the incorporation of the city. And so there are thresholds that are provided on when those local improvements need to go in, and it's a pretty low threshold. So finally, just what the City Council will be looking at tonight and for your consideration, City Council should consider the merits, qualifications, and benefits of each application, looking at the HDL scores, the information that was provided in the application packages, with the details on operation and community benefits, the suitability of each site, the draft minutes and recommendation of the Planning Commission, and any other information to determine if the application could be detrimental to health, safety, peace, morals, comfort, and general welfare in the neighborhood of the proposed use, or if it would be detrimental or injurious to property improvements in the neighborhood or the general welfare of the city. And this is the standard conditional use permit finding in our municipal code. So with that, that ends my presentation. I'll take any questions. I know that Matt Mogensen is available as well as our assistant city attorney.
Thank you, Christy. And I know that a lot of our comments have been from the public have been about the concern for the loss of local businesses, mom and pops businesses. And I wanted to address that a bit to start off with. I read an email submitted to the city from Sheila Olson, who owns Diva Hair Salon, suggesting that there has been relocation assistance offered by 3170 Del Monte applicant for a cannabis dispensary. And I think the email mentioned that all of the business there, including Kenny's tattoo business, are now okay and support the conditional use permit application by that applicant at 3170 Del Monte. Can you confirm that so that if it's true, it gets something off the table that has been a concern by residents?
I have not been made aware of that. I'm not sure, Matt or Bob, if you have, but those, I mean, really with any leasing, you know, any agreements that are going on between a landlord and tenant or that type of thing, we have not been made aware of at all. But I think that's a good question for the applicant.
Okay, so if there are people that wishes to speak to preserve the mom and pop, such as Diva's Hair Studios or Kenny's Tattoo Service, I think it's true because I read it today that Sheila Olson sent an email to the city supporting the application for a cannabis dispensary at 3170 Del Monte. We need to confirm that, but I read it and I was grateful that there had been progress at that location because that was a trouble spot. An elephant in the room on this issue, Christine, is that there are 2 of the 5 applicants that are right next door to each other. They are, of course, within 1,000 feet of each other, which is not allowed by the ordinance. So what direction does city staff have to city council in addressing that proximity?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Rathie on this. We have had considerable discussion about it. I think that, and I'll try to summarize, I think from our understanding of the ordinance is they would not be permitted to have 2 next to one another.
That is correct. The locations would be, I'll say, mutually exclusive. They should be each considered on their merits. However, you could not approve both without violating the ordinance.
Okay. I want to make as much progress tonight, and I think that if we were to punt on those 2 until we figured out how to resolve that problem, that would be good. But moving on, we have 4 scores at 100%, and we have 1 score at 94.7. Can you go into some detail about what might have been lacking with the applicant that scored 94.7? And you referred to a 2-point deficit, which I think correlated to a 5.26% deficit. But can you go into the detail about that?
Mr. Mayor, and probably Mr. Mogensen might be able to speak to that. I think Matt and Christy deserve a great deal of credit for all the effort that they've put into this matter, which has been considerable over quite a lengthy period. Before we open the public hearing, though, and before we get into the merits of various applications, I think I just need to make something clear that the process that we're engaged in this evening is a quasi-judicial matter, which will require the application of the rules and the standards to the individual applications. As such, all the applicants are entitled to due process, and that is a fair hearing before an impartial body free from arbitrary procedures and bias. The council tonight is going to hear from the public and has considered and heard the presentations by staff tonight, and they will hear from the applicants regarding these conditional use permits to operate combined adult use and medical commercial cannabis dispensaries in certain locations in the city. The council will also be asking questions, as we're beginning to do now, and to develop a record in reaching a decision on whether to grant up to 3 combined adult use medical cannabis permits. It would be appropriate at this time, before we start down the road of this inquiry, for any council members to disclose any conflicts of interest, any bias, any ex parte contacts or site visits. And I would inquire also as to whether anyone in the audience would object to any of the council members hearing the applications. And then let me just quickly move on. I know we're all looking to get into the meat of this matter, but the criteria upon which the applications will be decided are found in Title 19, the Commercial Cannabis Activities Ordinance, and other sections of the Municipal Code. The applications themselves, the scoring conducted by the city's expert HDL, and these presentations you're going to hear tonight from the applicants. All testimony, public and council comments, and evidence presented should be directed to those criteria which the speaker believes is applicable to the decision. Council's decision in each case must be supported by relevant findings based upon substantial evidence presented. The findings have often been described as bridging the analytical gap between the evidence and the decision. Failure of anyone to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the council and the application and the applicants an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal based on that issue. The failure of an applicant to raise issues related to the proposed conditions of approval or disapproval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages. Council may, at the request of a participant or on its own accord, continue the hearing or consideration of the matter to a date certain, provided that there's an opportunity for persons to present and rebut new evidence, arguments, or testimony related to the approved criteria. That's my legal statement this evening. I'll shut up now and let the matter proceed.
All right, let me kick off the disclosures that you mentioned are required. And I don't have any conflict of interest, et cetera, but I do have ex parte contacts that I'd like to discuss. Last night I had a town hall meeting open to the public, and part of that meeting discussed tonight's subject matter of cannabis dispensary permits. 2 of the people present and these individuals also spoke and gave some input to that matter. These 2 individuals joined Elizabeth Vischer, Brian McCarthy, Mike Kennedy, and Debbie B. I don't know Debbie's last name. And the 2 individuals were Tony Raphael and Wes Clark, who are part of the teams of 2 different applicants tonight. And the content discussed included the 1,000-foot requirement distance between any 2 cannabis dispensaries, the value of community support, the consideration of scoring, and the potential to flip a coin or other objective fair way that's rather random to decide who gets a permit if there's no other way to distinguish between the approved applicants. And there was some discussion of a tire shop in Soledad that was lost to a cannabis dispensary that moved in, and other mom and pops such as that in Gonzales, the city of Gonzales, that were lost when a cannabis dispensary moved in. Those were the themes of discussion that I had in an ex parte contact scenario that was last night during my town hall. So that's my disclosure, and I'll open it up to any other council members who may have had any conflict of interest or ex parte communication such as that.
I had a meeting, gosh, it feels like 10 years ago, a few months back, with Cesar Laura of the ALCIO union, and Pete Maturino of the UFCW5 union. And it was just to listen to their perspective on having people working in the cannabis industry unionize. And other than that, that I've also spoken with our police chief, but nothing, just gathering information about security. And again, that was like many, many months ago.
Thank you, Lisa. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. I have had no contact with any of the applicants, and to my knowledge, I've had no contact with anyone other than voters in the city and residents of the city who have sent me emails relating to their position, and I have read the same, and my own personal research.
Mr. Mayor, I did forget something. I'm sorry. Aside from all of the letters that we've received, I did have a conversation a long time ago with Tony Refugio. I forget Tony's last name, but he is one of the applicants this evening. And originally, he was going to, they were going to do a manufacturing business. And in light of that, I had called him to find out why and what happened, why he was withdrawing his application.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Frank. Councilmember Morton.
I've had no communications with any of the applicants. I have received numerous emails from people that reside in the city of Marina with comment, many of which were forwarded to us by Anita Shepard-Sharp, our court clerk. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Urrutia, anything you'd like to add?
I've had no ex parte communications with any of the applicants. Before this application process started, I had casual conversations with Tony Raful and Wes Clark, and I think some of the applicants from Marina Trading Company, on the parking lot after city council meetings, but never discussed specifics about any application because at the time of those conversations, there were no applications.
Okay, and I forgot to mention too, ex parte. Ex parte just refers to on the side, outside of public meetings. One of those was with Kathy Biala. Her and I have had 2 or 3 conversations, and the majority of it that I remember was her concern about the impact to local businesses, such as was the content of many of the letters that we've received via email and that are official part of this record. In particular, Michi's Japanese restaurant on Del Monte Boulevard. And then on the same property at Michi's, Steve Mast, the owner of the shopping center, I don't know if others got this information via email, but I want to disclose that I did in case I was the only one. And that is Steve Mast, the owner of the property, telling his version of what has happened in the lease agreement between Michi's as a tenant and the owner, Steve Mast, as the landlord. So there's a lot of detail on both of those, and I got an email that maybe others got from the family of the owners of Michi's restaurant, again, outlining their version, their perspective on the relationship between the tenant and the landlord. So I've had a lot of information about Michi's restaurant, and all of us have gotten a lot of letters and emails provided by the city and maybe individually via email on the potential loss of Michi's Japanese restaurant. Okay, Councilmember O'Connell, did your hand, I'm sorry, let's go to Matt Mogeson, our Assistant City Manager.
I wasn't sure if you were still looking for answers to a couple of the questions you asked, but I took the opportunity to look up a couple of them. And
okay, hold off just one moment, Matt. Let's make sure
okay.
that we're finished with the disclosures that our city attorney representative have asked us to submit. Frank, your hand is up. Is that for any kind of disclosure or is first at the future?
No, I already made the disclosure, but I do have a question or two when it comes to time.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Matt, for your patience. And if you could start to answer the questions that I asked.
Sure. The first one is, you asked about if we had received the email from Sheila, and the answer to that is, yeah, I did find that. And then to read it, it says, SGI Marina LLC DBA Stizzy has offered me relocation assistance for my business, Divas Beauty Salon, Beauty Studio, and Kinney Curtis Tattoo. I support this applicant and believe the City Council should also grant their CUP. So
can you repeat that CUP? It was a little bit hard for me to hear you.
And they support the City Council granting their conditional use permit application.
At 3170 Del Monte.
Yeah, that's one of the I believe, close to 100 public comments we received today.
All right.
And in terms of the scoring, you know, so we contracted with HDL back in February of last year for their expertise in evaluating and scoring applications. They had the job of taking our ordinance and using that to score the applications. So in the category that you're asking about, one of the applicants scored a little bit less than, that was local enterprise and community benefits. And what that basically comprised of was applicants getting a maximum of 8 points, with 1 point for every City of Marina resident that has a business that they commit to employ a person, and 1 point for every specified annual substantial commitment to one of the applicant's choice of any nonprofit or business within the community. So they were scored based on those two criteria. And in the ordinance, one of the things that we didn't have the ability to do was to handle appeals when it came to scoring and things like that. There was no ability for that in the ordinance. And due to the fact that it was a voter initiated and approved ordinance, our task was to keep in strict accordance with the interpretation of it. So.
Okay, can you go in, this might be an important point, so I want to ask you to go into some detail about that lower score. You gave the categories that led to the lower score. Can you give any specifics?
On that specific application?
Yeah, that they did not commit to donating as much to nonprofits. I'm grasping at straws, but you know, what was behind that lower score specifically, if you go as specific as you know?
Yeah, without going back and reviewing their application and doing basically what HDL did, you know, I really couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but they evidently had two less employees or 2 less donations to a community nonprofit organization. And maybe during this hearing I can find more information, but that's what I have right now.
And was that 2 less employees overall, or was that 2 less Marina resident employees?
2 less Marina resident employees would be one criteria. I'm not saying that's why they were deficient 2 points, but
that's one possibility.
Yeah.
Okay. I probably have more questions, but let's get to other council members. Go ahead, Frank O'Connell.
Thank you. On page 8 of the staff report, it says on the Planning Commission recommendations at the regular meeting on May 14th of 2020, the Planning Commission forwarded the application to City Council with the expectation that the proposed use meets the following findings for approval. Number 4 specifically says, include adequate measures that address the federal enforcement priorities for cannabis activities, including restricting access to minors, and ensuring that cannabis and cannabis products are not supplied to unlicensed and unpermitted persons within the state and not distributed out of the state. Was it the understanding of the Planning Commission that federal law does not now prohibit, or were they aware that it does prohibit marijuana dispensaries, federal law?
I don't know if maybe somebody else would be better to answer this question, but I'm not sure that the commission expressed that they were uniquely aware of the federal prohibitions.
Right. Was there any discussion relating to what they meant other than what's in this little paragraph as to federal enforcement priorities?
I believe that's taken directly out of the ordinance, but
yeah.
And I'm not sure that the ordinance goes into detail on that front.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't believe it
The
does.
last I heard, and maybe assistant city attorney knows, I believe U.S. Senator Harris did submit a bill relating to legalizing marijuana federally, as well as I think a congressperson did. Does anyone here know the status of that? To my understanding, it didn't get much further. Neither one of them.
I think the current Attorney General before he got busy with other matters recently, did speak to trying to harmonize the federal and the state laws on marijuana. There was a list of federal enforcement priorities that was issued, I believe, under the Obama administration. They were revised under the tenure of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. I believe Attorney General Barr has changed them since then, as far as the federal enforcement priorities. So they are, I would describe them sort of a work in progress at this point.
Okay, so the enforcement is one thing, but the actual existence of the law has not changed. It is still prohibited as far as we know under federal law.
Under federal law, I believe cannabis or marijuana is listed as a Schedule I substance.
And that goes back to the President Nixon, if I recall.
I think so.
Yeah, amazingly. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
It is a legal conundrum.
Yes.
Assistant City Attorney Bob Rathie, can you let everybody know whether or not we can use random chance objective means such as flipping a coin to pick between applicants that are tied, and whether or not we can use subjective reasons for deciding between applicants, and what those subjective reasons, which subjective reasons are allowed, since we do have a four-way tie with a close fifth place?
Well, no, my response as to a random chance for picking applicants, that would not be in accord with the ordinance, which requires the use of objective standards and evidence based on the on what you hear tonight to make your decision. Your decision cannot be, well, I would not advise that your decision be made in any random manner.
And then on the subjective, what are our options? What kind of subjective reasons can be used to distinguish between candidates, applicants?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question.
If we can't do objective reasons without evidence, that leaves us with subjective reasons. What are some of the subjective reasons that we can use?
I don't think I'd want to speculate at this point, Mr. Mayor. I don't think that would be a proper thing for me to do at this point. I realize this is a difficult task for the council, but I don't think it would be appropriate for me to speculate on what those reasons might be.
Okay, so let me get specific. The property at 3016 Del Monte Boulevard, which is an old a former gas station at the gateway to our city. When you come north off Highway 1, you see kind of an ugly old gas station. It's my thought that giving that a sidewalk, removing the gas pumps, and improving that would be to the benefit of the general welfare of the city and a benefit to the general welfare of the neighborhood. Is that a subjective reason that we can use to give an attaboy or a thumbs up to that applicant?
Theoretically, I'll speak with that would be a possible rationale for granting a permit.
Okay, and then when we go to Mortimer's, the shared parking that would have to be done, could that be a subjective reason we can use to say that the reduced parking, the inadequate parking, is not in the general welfare of the city? And flip side,
I think that's more in the nature of an objective finding, because if you're finding it's not compliant with the current code of the city, I think that's an objective determination.
And is that specific objective determination okay for us to use?
It would. again, I don't want to speak to specifics, but yes, I believe those types of determinations are the kind of determination that you're going to be required to make this evening. Or
okay, all right. And on the same property at Mortimer's, kind of on the flip side, would it be allowed for us to make the subjective general welfare consideration that improving that property with sidewalk, landscaping, gutter, would be in the benefit of the general welfare of the city and the general welfare of the neighborhood to improve the standard of that property, similar to 3016 that we discussed a couple minutes ago?
Again, theoretically, I think that would be appropriate for almost any of the sites.
Well, the Michi site doesn't really have any improvements suggested.
Yeah, I don't want to get into. It's not my role, Mr. Mayor, to get into the analyzing the attributes of the various sites. So I really don't think I should be opining on that particular.
Right. So I'm using
one site to another.
Right. So I'm using my prerogative to think about the pros and cons and asking you if my thoughts are within the legal realm of whether it's something we could be considering. And so I'm going to move on to the property near Vince DiMaggio Park. I forget the address, but it's the one that has the divas and the, so that must be 3170 Del Monte. Christine Hopper.
Mr. Mayor, you're coming up on 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay. I'll motion that we go to 10:30 to try to finish this item.
Mr. Mayor, I am feeling that there is a lot of information that we still need to have clarification upon the legal ramifications of our decision, like the legal parameters. And I also, we received, to your point, over 100 emails, which we got maybe an hour and a half before City Council. I have not had a chance to read through all of them. I don't think 10:30 is going to get us into where we need to be. And I would appreciate it if maybe we postpone this till next meeting, but that we also have a legal presentation of a sort where we, as well as the public, are really clear on what the parameters and guidelines are with which we're working. Because,
excuse me, Lisa, I don't want to interrupt you, but I need to because of the 10 o'clock.
Oh, sure.
My motion is to go up to 10:30 if needed for this issue. And it might be continued, like you're saying, but we would need a second and a vote to have that kind of discussion that you're starting.
I would like to make a substitute motion that we go till 10:10.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Does any member of the public wish to speak on that motion to extend this meeting to 10:10? I'm going to lower your hands and ask for new hands on this new motion. Does anyone want to speak to this motion of continuing this, continuing to talk about this till 10:10? Patrick Cherry, go ahead.
I'll second it. I agree.
Thank you. Kathy Biala, go ahead.
I would object to it because I are wanting to speak, and to delay this and not have them be able to say anything, I think is, I understand we're not going to get to it all today, but at least you can have some public comments so that they wouldn't have waited in vain for all these hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Makiko, go ahead. Go ahead, Makiko. Okay, Makiko, we'll try to come back to you. Paula, go ahead.
Yeah, I would support the motion, and I understand what Kathy was speaking to, that the public is waiting. However, I think for the council to even begin to get through the questions, we could be here till midnight before we even get to public speaking. So I would rather see everybody come back a little more rested with a little more information. And so I would support the motion so that at least you, the mayor, and a couple of other questions can get asked. And then we can kind of rest up and come back more refreshed with better information. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Okay, we'll close public comment, not seeing any other hands, and come back to council for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Berkeley,
At least Tintin, yes.
Councilmember Utia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. Okay, so we have 8 minutes, and go ahead, Lisa. I think you were
Just
talking.
a quick question then. So would it be possible to have a special meeting on this so that we don't have to have it so late at night? Because I completely agree with Kathy Biala and everyone that said this is really hard on the public to wait for so long. But by the time we get to public comment, it will be much later because there's a lot to discuss amongst council.
Lisa and other council members, what do you think about having next Tuesday as a special meeting just on this subject?
Rather than a special meeting, I would suggest if you're going to have a meeting, you do an adjourned regular meeting because you've already given notice.
Okay.
The public's notice.
Mayor,
We have a meeting on the 9th.
that's correct. We have our work plan budget study meeting, critical meeting next Tuesday.
We could have a special meeting on another night besides next Tuesday. Lane, what's our next regular city council meeting agenda looking like as far as busyness?
That is probably we have the urban growth boundary on our next city council agenda meeting.
Anything else?
That's the only really big item.
Okay, council, would you like to have it at that regular meeting, or would you like to schedule a Monday or Wednesday or Thursday special meeting just for this subject next week?
Mayor, I'll also toss it. We have another.
If you do it on the night of the regular council meeting, you'll have to have essentially 2 meetings because meeting to consider this matter in order so you don't have to renotice it. It's going to have to be an adjourned regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. Lane, go ahead.
We also have another special meeting that week for the actual cannabis ordinance revisions.
Is that a public hearing meeting, Lane?
Yes, that's on, Matt, is that the 17th?
So yeah, the 17th we have, that's a Wednesday, right? It's a joint study session of the City Council and Planning Commission on the draft changes to the cannabis ordinance for the ballot this year. And then the 18th, we're doing a joint public outreach meeting with the county on districting.
Okay, so that's a couple weeks in advance. Thinking about next week, when we have a meeting on Tuesday, can we have a meeting on Monday or Wednesday or Thursday of next week to continue this meeting to that night?
I think, as the Assistant City Attorney just pointed out, we wouldn't be able to, unless it's to a regular meeting, we'd have to notice it, and I don't know if we'd have time. Am I right,
Bob Rathi, is that correct if we continue tonight to a date certain?
I would suggest that what you should do tonight, if you want to continue to a date certain, is open and continue the public hearing and continue the meeting, the regular meeting, to a subsequent adjourned regular meeting, which would be a regular meeting for all purposes, including the continuation of the public hearing that you'd open tonight, given the fact that this public hearing has already been noticed.
Okay, Bob, so that precludes, that does not allow the option of having it next Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Is that correct?
You I believe you could adjourn this meeting to any of those days.
Okay, so does the council wish to continue this meeting to next Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? Councilmember O'Connell.
Wednesday.
I agree. Anybody else? Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
Yes, Wednesday. Thursday's a forum meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
That might be a planning commission day, it sounds
It's
like.
on a
Next
Wednesday, Matt? I thought the
No,
planning commission met on Thursdays.
Planning Commission is June 11th.
What day is that? Is that a Thursday or
That's a
Wednesday?
Thursday.
And you're talking
Okay.
about Wednesday, June 10th?
It sounds like it, yes. So,
I wouldn't be able to join until 7:30. I've got a meeting from 6 to 7:30.
is there any chance that, that meeting has to happen for you, Lisa?
It's AMBAG. So
I'm available on Wednesday.
Okay, I think Lisa is too. She can have her alternate substitute for her.
I think I'm her alternate.
That's right.
Okay, I'll motion that we.
For you, and then I'll be absent.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'll motion that we continue this meeting to Wednesday, June 10th at 6 p.m.
Before we do that, I think we should open the public hearing so we can also continue that public hearing.
Okay, so
There's
to
a
open
public
the
hearing scheduled tonight. The first step would be to open the public hearing and then continue the public hearing to the adjourned regular meeting, which will be scheduled for, I believe it's, we said Wednesday, June 10th at what time?
Okay, so I will adjourn. I'm sorry, I will open the public hearing in order to adjourn it to continue this regular meeting on Wednesday, June 10th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Is this, Bob, a motion and second and normal voting process that we're in right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can we put this motion on hold so that I can make a motion to go to 10:15?
Second that motion.
That would
Okay.
be.
Oh my gosh.
Does any member of the public want to wish to comment on that motion to extend to 10:15? Not seeing
See,
any.
that's why I voted against 10:10.
You're taking up valuable time, Frank. Okay. We'll come back to council. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Matt?
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember Utia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
and Mayor Delgado.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So to pick back up on that motion to open this public hearing and continue it to next, adjourn it to next
Adjourned meeting.
to next Wednesday. Do we have any public comment on that? All right, seeing none, we'll come back to the council. Can you give us a roll call, please, Matt?
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Councilmember Utia,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
and Mayor Delgado.
Yes. So please, everyone, there's 71 of you in the public who are on the line right now. Please join us next Wednesday, June 10th at 6 p.m. And this will be the first thing that we consider. And you'll have plenty of time to talk, and we probably won't even need to limit the amount of time, so you'll all have up to 4 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight, and we will hopefully see everybody back here Wednesday, June 10th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you to all the council members and staff. It's been a good meeting, and I'm sorry that we didn't get further on the agenda.
Stay healthy.
Lane, is there anything, Lane, is there anything we need to report as far as COVID update? At every meeting, we should at least touch base on the COVID update emergency situation, if there's anything to report.
You got 2 minutes.
There is nothing to report, although we did have an item on temporary arrangements for outdoor seating that we're gonna do that very similar to the sign ordinance. It's just administrative and it's just a temporary thing, and I will be doing that later on this week so that our restaurants can put their seating out in front of their private property and work with their landlords. What we're trying to do something is as simple and easy as possible for our business owners and still make it so that the city doesn't have a lot of liability and things like that. So that will be happening later on this week.
Lane, can we ratify that if it needs to be ratified after the cannabis is discussed next Wednesday?
Yeah, that's just going to be administrative, so we won't need to ratify, but I just want to make you aware that that would be happening.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that we have 2 items which would go along with the adjourned regular meeting. Those items are to consider the loan program for residents and businesses, and also the abatement of business license penalties till October 2020. Those are on the agenda for this evening.
So if there's no objection, can those be put after the cannabis issue on Wednesday, June 10th?
Yes, they would be after the cannabis issue would precede them anyway, because it's ahead of them in the ordinance anyway, in the agenda.
All right.
Unless the council takes action to change the order of the agenda.
I do not think so.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you to everybody involved.